I'm calling back to order this meeting of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education. We will have this evening's broadcast statement read by our student board member, Halbo.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast, Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air Monday, March 11th at noon and Wednesday, March 13th at 6 p.m. and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. We welcome members of the audience to address the board. Please complete a speaker form located in the back of the community room and give them to our communications representative along with any handouts you may have for the board prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until your item comes up on the agenda. Please also turn off your cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate.
Thank you, Student Board Member Halbo. Item 4.2, the Pledge of Allegiance, which tonight will be read by the Rosemont High School art installation with a presentation done by Board Member Christina Pritchett. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, please come up. Board Member Pritchett is going to say a few words. Oh, please come back up to the podium. Board Member Pritchett is going to say a few words, and then you'll have a chance to respond.
The architects who designed Rosemont campuses The architects who designed Rosemont's campus incorporated the local geography by building the pattern of Sacramento's two rivers meeting into the cement paths that flow through our campus. In the building, they added physical elements evocative of the railroad, central to the Sacramento's history and position as a state capital. With this mural, as you can see on the screen, the 2017-18 Rosemont art teacher, Jennifer Mamola, and the Rosemont advanced art students have added the human element of our city and the creative spirit that we all share. 200, 300, or 400 years ago, the people standing in this area of the state would have been members of the, Maidu and Miwok tribes. To honor their part of history, the students added a border pattern on the sides based on the Northern California basket patterns, the visual art that would have been created here. The shadow figures, wearing traditional Northern California native dance regalia, invite you to a toto, the word used by local tribes for a dance gathering. And the first word on the left is kautu. Is that correct? I need the teacher to tell me. Invites you in the language it invites you in the language of the plains, Miwok, to dance. This all speaks to our past, but art is never static. The additional words surrounding the dancers represent the current language spoken by the students who created the piece in Tagalog, Arabic, English, Spanish, Hindi, Korean, and Mandarin. We invite you to come in, join in, dance, inspire, and create. Before I was a board member, I was actually the PTA president at Rosemont High School. In fact, my daughter spent, both of us, my daughter and I spent much time in the theater at Rosemont High School. And every time that there was a production, I always looked at the walls in the lobby of our beautiful theater there and thought, there needs some color in here. And I went to Miss V. Hill, the principal at Rosemont High School, and asked if she could ask our art department if they could find a project to add color, and I just left it at that. I was so pleased to see the art piece that you and your students had created in there. I do want to personally thank Ms. Mamola and her husband, Gary, for their assistance with this project, and I'm so happy to be able to have commissioned this. And thank you to all the students, even though I know most of them couldn't make it here tonight. Please send my regard to them and let them know that I really appreciate them. And I know I got to express that to them when we had the opening of the installation. If you hadn't had a chance to view it, I highly recommend that you visit the theater and look at it. I'm going to come down and give you a certificate. Would you like to say a few words first? No? No words? That's what I thought.
Words on the side from the language. They did an amazing job.
You could bring these, but, oh, it's okay. It's just Alejandro here. I'm just trying to find him.
Now he's got the handheld.
Congratulations on your outstanding achievement. Moving on to item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
None, Madam President.
Thank you. Item 6.0, agenda adoption. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Item 7.0, special presentations. Tonight we have Board Resolution 3060, the fiscal solvency plan to save our schools. And we're going to divide that fiscal solvency plan resolutions into a portion of which each of our board members will read. I'll go ahead and begin. The resolution on the fiscal solvency plan to save our schools. Whereas the Sacramento City Unified School District is facing a significant budget deficit, and that deficit is expected to grow in future years if corrective action is not taken. And whereas the Sacramento County Office of Education disapproved the district's budget in the 2018-19 fiscal year, and on October 13, 2018, on the basis of a budget deficit and spending beyond the district's reserve. And whereas the Sacramento City Unified School District, due to budgetary concerns, must reduce the budget by $35 million by June 30th, 2019, in order to balance the budget and maintain the required 2% reserve. And whereas the district will be unable to reach its goal of making budgetary cuts that do not impact student programs and services unless all district stakeholders work together and make shared sacrifices. And can I ask Board Member Vang if you'll read the next section?
Whereas, as a result of the district's limited financial resources, a number of valuable opportunities and programs for all students are not paid for by the district, such as district-sponsored visits to feeder middle school and elementary students, district-sponsored visits to feeder high schools for middle school students, district-sponsored visits to careers through experiential visits to local businesses, district-sponsored visits to colleges and universities for elementary, middle school, and high school students, exposure to arts, including theater, museum, ballet, symphony, etc., expanded summer learning program for students at all grade levels, science-related camps, organize elementary sports program, transportation for students to participate in extracurricular activities. Whereas not offering valuable programs to close opportunity gaps and therefore limit the number of students for whom opportunities are offered is inconsistent with the district's goal of equity, access, and social justice. And whereas students should be at the center of all budget decisions and all employees should work collaboratively together to protect funding for core academic programs and services to keep cuts away from areas that directly affect our students. And I will ask Member Garcia to continue.
Thank you. Whereas the district has identified several areas where we can further the work, the district staff has already begun and make even greater strides in saving our schools. And whereas our core values of equity, access, and social justice are not limited to our students, and we are equally committed to applying these core values when making decisions related to our employees. And whereas any cuts made to save our schools from a takeover will be based on parity relative to each bargaining unit size and cost to the district. And whereas the district has identified the need to maintain its costs for unrepresented administrators and managers as a low percentage of the district's budget expenditures, and whereas the district's administrators at both school sites and district office provide critical support services to school sites and advance the goal of increased student achievement, and whereas the district's spending on unrepresented administrators and managers as a percentage of total unrestricted expenditures compares favorably with that of similarly sized or larger school districts in Sacramento County. And I will pass on now the reading to Board Member Minnick.
All right, thank you. Whereas a portion of the cost for unrepresented administrators and managers is paid outside of unrestricted general funds through grants and other funding sources that do not factor into our current budget deficit. And whereas the district has already made cuts in personnel in positions as unrepresented administrators and managers, as well as vacant unrepresented administrator or management level positions that will be closed or eliminated for a combined $1 million in cuts already made at the district office level. And whereas, according to the findings of the Fiscal Crisis Management Assistance Team, the district currently spends approximately 91% of its unrestricted budget on employees, with a large portion of those expenses being consumed by the district, contributing nearly $35,000 annually to health and welfare benefits for employees. And whereas a rebalancing of employee benefit contributions with a return to benefits that are in parity to comparable school districts while providing high-quality benefit plans to our employees is critical in solving the district's financial crisis. And whereas district labor partners should have a strong voice in identifying high-quality and comparable benefit plans for their members, and whereas a continuation of our cost-saving efforts, the district staff and our labor partners have been working to identify high-quality and comparable health benefit plans for our employees and are similar to those currently offered and in line with what comparable school districts offer to their employees. And I will pass this on to Member Wu.
Thank you, Vice President Minnick. Whereas in the past, the district has contributed funds to reduce our other post-employment benefits that are provided to our eligible employees upon retirement to make efforts toward funding this substantial unfunded liability of the district. And whereas accrued vacation time is an unemployment benefit that the district is required by law to pay in cash when an employee leaves or retires from the district. And whereas in the past years, employees accrue large amounts of unused vacation time and receive sizable lump sum payments upon leaving employment with the district. And whereas beginning with the 2017-2018 school year, the district took action to pay down the liability resulting from employee accrual of vacation time. This required supervisory, management, administrative, confidential represented and non-represented employees to use vacation time or be cashed out annually based on noted annual limits. And whereas since implementing this change in practice, the district has reduced its liability for unused vacation costs by approximately $4 million for the fiscal year 2017 and 2018 alone. And whereas as part of its fiscal recovery plan, the district plans to develop and implement practices that can reduce the financial burden for payment of unused vacation time, thereby providing more financial resources for services to students. President Ryan.
Thank you. Whereas District Superintendent Jorge Aguilar has agreed to forego any salary increase under his employment agreement until the district receives a qualified or positive certification as defined by Ed Code, Section 42131. Whereas it is imperative for the district to control administrator costs in order to balance the budget and maintain required reserves. And whereas the district has already made approximately $100,000 in cuts from the board office alone, now therefore it be resolved by the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education, which finds and follows the determining foregoing recitals that are true and correct. Member Minute, can you please read spending on administrators?
Back to me. Number two, the district's 2019-2020 fiscal year spending on unrepresented administrators and managers will not exceed the cost level established for the current year in the district's second interim budget of 2018-2019. Let me keep going. The district superintendent and staff will develop strategies to control administrator costs within the parameters set forth above, including but not limited to not filling certain administrative vacancies, salary freezes, and other cost-saving measures. Number four, the superintendent will forego his 3.5% salary increase until the district achieves either a qualified or positive certification of its interim reports.
Member Pritchett, will you please read employee benefits?
Employee health benefits, number 5. The district will work with labor partners and unrepresented employees to rebalance employee benefit contributions with the goal towards returning the district contributions that are in parity to the comparable school districts while providing high-quality benefit plans to our employees.
Member Wu, Vice President, will you please read the final section?
My pleasure. The district's managers, supervisors, and administrators will receive and review the applicable collective bargaining agreements regarding vacation use, accrual, carryover, and buyout. The district's managers, supervisors, and administrators are directed to work with their employees to develop a plan that allows each employee who earns vacation to use that vacation in the year earned and minimize any vacation carryover consistent with the terms of any negotiated agreement. The district's managers, supervisors, and administrators will work collaboratively to develop methods for encouraging employee vacation use, to develop comprehensive vacation schedules, and to carefully monitor the levels of employees' vacation accrual. The president, district superintendent, or designee is authorized and directed to take any other actions necessary to carry out this resolution.
Thank you, First Vice President Wu. We know that the district faces daunting budget challenges before us. We also know that it's unconscionable that California currently ranks 41st in the nation in terms of per-student funding. I think that we have to together work towards a state solution to increase the investments being made in California's public schools. But we recognize that we have a daunting task before us, which is closing a $35 million budget deficit and balancing a budget by June 30th to avoid state takeover. This is the beginning and what we hope will be comprehensive planning and work with our community to ensure that we do everything in our power, leaving no stone unturned. As you heard, there are a wide set of things that we are looking at making reductions in at the administrative office, despite being 25% lower than all other offices in the region. Will be receiving steep cuts. And we are looking at a variety of other cost savings measures that will allow us to do what we can to protect our students as we have to make these very difficult choices in the coming months. With that, I ask for a motion to adopt the resolution. Oh, we have no public comments on this item. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
Madam President, in moving this resolution, I want to note that in tomorrow's Los Angeles Times is an article regarding state workers' cash and unused vacation, and they noted that the state paid its employees in 2017 nearly $300 million in bank time off, and as of 2017, there is $3.5 billion in unused leave. And with that, we are taking the first steps in making that right for our district, and I move this resolution.
Thank you, Vice President Wu. And we have a second from Board Member Pritchett. All those, student board member preferential vote.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? With that, the motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.0, public comment. Each of our public commenters will have 2 minutes to provide public comment. If we have public commenters that wish to combine their public comments, they can do that as well.
Okay, we have 13 public comments. If you could come up in the order you're called, please, and stand in line. First is Ian Arnold, followed by Alan Dory, Sally Manduhan, Carolina Flores, Carri Cornwell, Joel Tell, Melissa Tell, Naomi Roberts, Cassandra Jennings, Carolyn Wiggin, Sammy Haas and Sarah Thomas, Bob Hamas, and David Fisher.
Thank you.
So we actually are going to, Alan and I are going to combine our time, if that's okay.
Okay, please begin.
Okay. Good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, board members. We had a press conference earlier, so I'm not going to repeat everything that we talked about at the press conference. Clearly, we're at a crossroads. Clearly, we understand there's a real problem with the budget. We've got to all step up and fix it. You have some choices you can make, and obviously, tonight you're going to vote on the beginning of one of those choices. But I want to say that as we move forward, rescinding layoff notices is very important, because if you wind up laying off all the folks who you've given notices to, you're going to destroy the district. And I know that's not what you want to do. Secondly, a state takeover would be one of the most horrible things I could think of. Several of us were walking the picket line in Oakland last week, proudly with the Oakland Unified School District strikers, and part of the reason that they were striking was because the state takeover had cost them so much. Wages were down, benefits were down, student achievement was down. Well-performing schools were being closed because of the communities they served, whereas poorly performing schools were being increased in size. All of those things are where we don't want to go here. So again, you've got a lot of tough choices to make. We want to work with you on those choices. We do believe that with the cuts that have already been made and the change in the management of the healthcare, that gets us enough time to try to figure out where we're going from there. And then obviously the long-term solution is fixed funding in California. Alan?
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
Hi, this is Alan Dory with Teamsters and also part of the LMC coalition. I want to point out that the finger pointing about things that went wrong in the past is not going to be very productive. Yes, the district has made some bad choices and certainly has a lot to do with the problem we're in. But nonetheless, we have to go forward. And that's really where we are. A state receivership is not the answer. Hopefully layoffs will not be the answer. We have 4 of the 5 labor bargaining groups that are part of the coalition, trying to work together with the district to explore healthcare options and avoid, hopefully, both the receivership and the layoffs. We hope that the other union joins us. I don't want to point fingers at them either. But we all have something to do together. We need to work together. It's our best solution for our children, for the district, and for the many, many thousands of employees here. This is the state capital. For God's sakes, we're the we're the 5th largest economy in the world, and we're a sinking ship as the flagship district. That should never have been. And I know a lot of it has to do with the state budget, which unfortunately most of the public aren't aware of, that there's all kinds of mandated expenses, for example, in special ed with zero or way grossly insufficient funding. And they don't realize that all the districts, not just Sac City, are facing those challenges. But right now, we have an imminent challenge to face to avoid those layoffs and avoid receivership. I invite the board to continue to participate with us. Those members that have, thank you. Those that haven't, please at least stay in communication or do join us. And I do invite the other labor partner to join the coalition to work on a solution together. That's our best option for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will also say that as the LMC, the amount of transparency and candor that we've experienced has been very refreshing. There are issues that in the past we'd questioned strongly. And when the district has come forward and said, our fault, let's fix this, that's been amazing. And other places where we can see what the numbers really look like and how we got there, we actually can believe those numbers and take them back to our members. So it's nice to be able to work together with that level of candor.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold.
Out here.
Do we have any other speakers from this group? Okay, so we'll reset the clock.
Hi, I'm Carolina Elena Flores. I'm the new chair of LULAC, that's Latin Americans Citizens. And I'm gravely concerned about the lack of plan for our expanding Latino population and the languages, not just Spanish, but also Hmong and many of the other Black culture language. I don't see a plan for this increasing population. I understand you're in some logistics problems, but you can't ignore us. You have to hire more Latino teachers. You have to put in monies for curriculum for Spanish-speaking kids and for Chicano kids to learn about themselves, their culture. There's no way that we're going to get economic development in Sacramento unless we have a targeted focus on the Latino community. I cannot tell you how often this has been ignored, and it's impossible to be able to make headway for our future. We are having a continuous disenfranchisement of the community, and I don't think that that should be allowed. We are looking at the economic development dollars that we're not getting, and I don't think anyone else is concerned about that because, you know, I understand you have problems about teacher hires, about the budget and all that, but I'm looking at the whole picture. We're looking at the whole community, the world, and we do not see ourselves in your world. And I want you to correct that. And I think it's very important that we start firsthand. What is your plan for the Spanish-speaking population? What is your plan for the Hmong? What is your plan for the Blacks? Where is it? I don't see it in the budget. And I understand there's the, financial difficulties, but you cannot ignore all of us, all of the population, because you're having problem with fiduciary issues.
And I hope you'll get involved in our lowest performing subgroup block grant, which is going to help address some of the issues for that community. And I appreciate your comment. And also want to say we're very happy that this last year we actually saw a 7% gain in four-year college readiness for our Latinx population. And that was due to interventions implemented by the superintendent's team.
We also don't want to ignore the DACA students of kids that are going to college now, and now they're afraid of being deported. I think it's very important that we're looking at the future, not just concentrating on the K-12.
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate your comments.
All right.
Good evening, President Ryan, board members. My name's Carri Cornwell. Some of you know me from other places in the world, but I come before you tonight as a parent of an 8th grader. My son has gone to school in Sac City School since he was a kindergartner. We've been very fortunate. He's always been able to walk to school, which is a fabulous thing. As an 8th grader, he started the year, thinking about where he would go to high school and went through the process that is now choosing a high school. Initially, he was interested in maybe going to Rio Americano, which is actually my alma mater, but we live near McClatchy. Ultimately, he decided he wanted to go into HISP at McClatchy. So he went through the application process. This year, that process was in flux, as you're probably aware. But maybe a month or so later than historically has been the case, we got our letter. I came home from work last Thursday, the 28th, and he kind of moved me into the kitchen and very proudly showed me that he had received a letter to me. Congratulations, your son has been offered admission to the McClatchy HISP program next year. Then And he called his grandmother and, contacted his friends. And then on Tuesday night of this week, I got a call from an employee of the district on our home phone telling me that that letter had been sent in error. And she told me that 15 or 16 other students had received the letter, that they would be retested and put into a secondary lottery. And I was able to ask her a few questions. I said, well, how many students or how many spots are there for the secondary lottery? She didn't know. I asked, would they go to the bottom of the waiting list? She said there is no waiting list. She explained to me that it was confusing because apparently there had also been sent out denial letters to students who had qualified and should have been offered admission. So I tell you this story because I wanted you to hear it from a parent and a student, and I know many of you are parents, so you can imagine the conversation I had to have with my son.
Absolutely.
And I come to you to tell you, but also because I want to know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Carrie.
you.
I appreciate you sharing your story, and I'm so sorry for your son's experience.
Hi, my name is Joel Tell. This is my son Liam. I'm just here to express the same displeasure with the HISP enrollment process. Liam received the same call. I feel that he and all of the students are owed an apology. It's been a crazy emotional roller coaster, and what's been done by taking control of this HISP acceptance process and enrollment process out of the hands of the teachers who have handled it gracefully for years and taken it in-house to the district. You broke a system that wasn't broken. I think the control needs to go back to the schools immediately. There was no reason for it to have been removed initially. There was a failed science project that claimed racial bias on acceptance. There was no validity to that, and it was taken because of that. At a time where we were facing budget crisis, this failure and, it's a show of incompetence. The additional time and cost that it's going to take to re-implement this testing and everything, it's just, I'm here to say that I'm disappointed in the board, in the district.
Thank you for sharing your story, and we're doing everything we can to rectify the process.
I belong to them, but I'm here to speak for another family that wasn't able to make it tonight, whose son experienced the same thing that mine did. Her note to me said that my twins applied to the HISP program in December, and I would like to say that the high school specialty application process has been, in my opinion, a complete failure. It started with lack of clarity and difficulty obtaining clear and accurate answers to even basic questions about the actual application process. On our West Campus tour, the principal admitted that he couldn't answer many of the questions that were asked from the parents because he simply didn't know and he didn't want to give out inaccurate information. From there, we suffered the stress of one of our teacher recommendations not being submitted in time due to computer issues. Next came the multiple delays in the mailing out of decision letters. After finally receiving an email that the HISP decision letters had been mailed out on February 25th, after a full month's delay compared to previous years. A week went by and we still had not received a letter for either of my children. I called the enrollment center and emailed Ellen Wong, the HISP program director, to find out what was going on. After multiple calls to the enrollment center, I finally got a person to answer the phone and was told that there had been some problem with the HISP letters, and we should receive something in the next couple of days. Ms. Wong responded promptly to my email and kindly forwarded it to the district office. And then yesterday, we received a voicemail stating that one of my children, my son, had mistakenly not been included in the original lottery for the HISP program, and he would be placed in a replacement lottery later this month, which we would then get the results by mail. However, there was absolutely no mention about the status of my daughter's application. Today, I've called the enrollment center for every 15 to 30 minutes in order to speak to somebody, but I cannot get anybody to pick up the phone. I have also left a message for the superintendent of Sac City Unified School District, and I'm very upset and would like some answers about what's happening and how this process is going to be rectified and much improved in the future, because the current process is a complete fiasco.
Thank you. Can I please ask our board specialist, Nathaniel Browning, to give you his card so we can follow up with our customer service office as well to make sure that you don't have to call again trying to connect with someone? Thank you. Oh, and can we get your name as well, please? Thank you. You can give it.
Good evening. Thank you. My name's Carolyn Wiggin. I am the parent of a 6th and 8th grader. Like the other families that have spoken, we were looking forward to high school, and we still are. We went to every meeting we could in the fall, open houses for schools we were interested in, meetings held at the library for 8th grade parents. We tried hard to get accurate information, and we just got different stories every time about how this process was going to work. The district also changed its mind throughout the fall about how the process would work. We did our best, and we got unlucky. So I have been calling to find out if different programs have actually had lotteries. Do they have waiting lists? Could we somehow get on? And people at the office have not been willing to tell me that. I don't know if it's because they don't know or if it's being kept secret, but given that the goal was we're going to make it more transparent and more fair, I feel the opposite has happened. And I hope there's a second lottery process so kids who got hurt this way can have a shot. Thank you.
So I know that you're the last of our parents on this issue, but I do want to say that this happening to one family is one family too many. And I will be directing the superintendent to ensure that each and every one of your families is personally followed up with and given support so that we can help you both with the lottery process moving forward, but also with helping to ensure that you're placed in another school in the district if that is in fact the only option. And I want to just apologize so sincerely. I cannot imagine what you're going through. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Ryan and members of the board. My name is Cassandra Jennings, and I'm President and CEO of the Greater Sacramento Urban League. I'm also a parent of two children that went through the Sac City Unified School District and the guardian of my nephew who lives with us, who currently attends J.F. Kennedy High School. I know these are tough times throughout our community. I also know that you are going through fiscal times, but I want to remind you, which you do know, is that the data shows that African American students are disproportionately represented in everything that's bad. Suspension rates, dropout rates, low reading levels, preparation for A through G that gets them into college, much less prepares them for the workforce. I appreciate you nominating me with others on the African American Achievement Task Force. We have been working over 6 months to come up with you with recommendations to really change the trajectory of not only the students that are left behind, but this district forever. We will be coming to you in a couple of weeks with some recommendations, and I just want to make it clear that as we make these recommendations and as we go through those challenging times, we cannot forget the purpose that we're here, and that's to serve the kids. I certainly urge you for the importance of addressing underrepresented communities and intentionally addressing equity and quality education for all students. I urge you to make kids first as you look at all of the recommendations, even in these fiscal times. I also urge all the people that are associated with the district, wherever you are, and including the community, to come together, because state takeover is not an option. We either need to be a part of the solution or we're part of the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jennings.
Hi. We'd like 4 minutes. There's 2 of us.
Okay.
My name is Naomi Roberts. I am a parent to a student at Sacramento New Tech High School. In December, I came to this board to motivate the special education department to expedite in its investigation regarding a complaint I lodged in compensatory services owed to all the students at my son's school. 4 months later, Ms. Bryant responds to me with a puzzling calculation of minutes owed to my child. But the larger issue is that I made the complaint in behalf of all students that I know have been underserved. I'm at the school every day, and my son is now getting what he needs to be successful. But I am here as a proxy for all students with IEPs who went without services from August to December, whose parents cannot put in the time and effort I have had to give just to get this far. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
I'm the resource teacher at Sacramento New Tech High School. I came on board with Sac City in November of last year, and I'm been very pleased to be able to be part of such a great dynamic school. This is one of my parents. I just had a question around defining equity for students with disabilities. I was looking at the contract, page 20, aid support, and I'm looking for the equity in Article C, where it says that at least 80% of the RSP teachers within the district shall be provided with an instructional aid, and then it references an ed code.
Yeah.
To me, that reads a little vague. So, for example, my school is definitely a school that could benefit from an instructional aid for the caseload that I carry.
Yes.
So is it a random 80% just to meet a compliance? Or are we really looking at that with an equitable lens and saying, we're going to prioritize by student need and we're going to use those resources pragmatically and place them where there is the most need?
Can you give me that ed code again so that we can have it for our reference when we
Sure,
look into this
it's
response?
EC 56362. It's page 20 of the SETA contract, and it's under aid support, and it's Article C, and I can just give you.
Okay, perfect. That would be wonderful. And thank you very much for both of your comments and for your advocacy for our special education community.
Thank you.
Yes, please. Thank you. I figured you were taking over to him. Over here. Either way.
Is it possible to get the document camera on?
Elliot, can you turn on? Thank you.
Is it? Anyway, I'll start. Greetings from Fairy Tale Town. My name is Sarah, and this is Sammy, and we are from the Education and Program Department at Fairy Tale Town. Something I like to do sometimes, raise your hand if you've ever been to Fairy Tale Town.
Since I was like 5 years
That's like
old.
a party trick I like to do. So we wanted to take our 2 minutes to talk about Crypto Club, which is an upcoming teacher training workshop underwritten by the University of Chicago and the National Science Foundation. So you might be thinking, what is Crypto Club? And we're hoping to pull up the flyer, and you guys all have flyers as well. But Sammy, what is Crypto Club?
Crypto Club is a program that can be an after-school program in your Scout programs. It can be implemented in your math classrooms, but it's basically taking math and making it fun. Kids like to break codes, secret messages, and things like that, and it's teaching them the math skills to be able to break those codes. And because of the mathematicalness of it, cryptography is an exciting hook for learning and applying mathematics. And it's mostly 5th through 8th graders, but it can be used in higher grades and lower grades. And we have a teacher workshop next weekend. So during our leader training, participants will learn how to teach cryptography in fun, engaging ways, incorporating them in their schools, and use a variety of games, interactive activities, and stories to engage their students in how to establish a Crypto Club program, also with our support. And obviously no prior cryptography experience needed, but it's a really cool program. We're excited about it, and we hope to get it involved with all of our schools.
Great. And I have to tell you, we also go to your Fairy Tale Land Adventure Playground quite often. And we're very excited to see that the governor and first partner actually went out and played out there for about 2 hours in Maple at
so
the old
fun.
elementary school site. You're doing amazing work. Thank you.
Thank you.
We still have some time on the clock. So I did want to share that it is our 60th anniversary this year. So we are celebrating in style. I wanted to highlight for our educators in September, we have an educator reception at Fairy Tale Town. All previous educators and current educators are welcome to come learn about all of our educational programs. We do classroom visits and outreach and workshops on top of just your fun field trip to our location, which is expanding by about a half an acre. So this is a big year for us. Just wanted to highlight that we have a lot going on for educators, and if you had any questions, be available to answer that. So I gave them my card and our current marketing materials, and would love your help spreading the word to teachers. Sometimes they forget that we have stuff for the older kids too. So this crypto club is geared towards older kids, but can be adapted for elementary school students as well.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Hi, Bob.
Good evening, President Ryan and board members. I'm Bob Hamas from Making Sense Work, and I'm here tonight to briefly talk about the Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative, the organizations that have taken over the old Fruit Ridge Elementary School. And I'm sure most of you are aware of a lot of the groups that are housed there. And there's also I'll just mention some of them besides Making Sense Work, the Black Parallel School Board, the Girls Self-Esteem Project, and Natalia Johnson Ballet Conservatory. HIP is there, the Hub, Outside the Walls, Pro Youth and Families, Reading Partners of Sacramento, Sacramento ESL, the River Oak Family Community Center. Many groups are out there, and many other, the list goes on and on of groups who partner with the groups that are already housed there, as well as who utilize the facilities and also run summer programs out of FRCC. The reason I'm here tonight is all the tenants there, we thoroughly recognize the great deal that we're getting. But it allows us to have space so that we couldn't afford, commercial rates to have space at other locations. So the district, I know, is in financial difficulty, but they're looking at possibly raising the rates there. And we also have a new management company that is trying to come online and take over this facility to really move it forward. We've kind of been stuck for a few years. So if you look at the groups that are housed there and think about the bargain that the district is getting for the services that are being provided to students and families, I hope you will consider not raising our lease for the next 12 to 18 months so that we can really get our feet underneath us and move forward.
Thank you, Bob. You know we've worked with you in the past on some of those challenges, and I know we have our facilities committee and board member Minnick that will continue to work with you to ensure that you can remain at Fruit Ridge Community Collaborative. We so appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Facilities committee.
I'll get this on it. Hi, I'm David Fisher, president of the Sacramento City Teachers Association. Before I start on these remarks, I just want to echo that we had similar experiences with my daughter. Although we live across the street from West Campus, we had an 8-week delay with no explanation and produced a lot of anxiety. And I just, anyway, it's something that really shouldn't have happened. So I've been hearing a lot about health benefits, and the district keeps putting out report after report. Just want to kind of publicly, everyone watching the news here, just have the district acknowledge, or not, that we already have an agreement to reduce health benefit costs, and that the agreement says, this is from your board packet last year in December, that the savings go towards the students. In addition to what you read there, there are specific goals laid out in the mayor's handwriting, and then including school nurses and school psychologists. And so, unlike other unions that just demand class size reduction, we said we'll find, and other things, we'll find the savings. And the superintendent and myself signed this. So I would just like an acknowledgement, because it seems like in everything that goes out, it's almost like trying to embarrass us as the enemy. Can we get an acknowledgement from the district that you know this agreement exists?
So, David, we passed the agreement, the tentative agreement, and I know we continue to talk about two issues at stake, but I do want to say, I think it's very important to acknowledge that we are in a fiscal crisis and that the healthcare savings that we had talked about actualizing should have come in the form of July 1st of last year.
Right, because the savings go towards the students, and the reason we didn't go forward with that was because the district wouldn't commit to their commitment. So then, to be more honest going forward, and this is in lieu of our speaking SCTA time, so I'll finish up, then it would be much more honest to not omit the fact that you already have an agreement to reduce healthcare savings. And unlike other unions, we didn't just demand that you find the savings, that we found the savings or a potential savings, and that those would go towards the students. And what you're actually evidently proposing now is to renege and backtrack on that and not let those savings go towards the students in the form of special needs, school
Thank you,
psychologists.
David.
Let me finish up, and that's my time. So, and what you really want is for your own budget situation and maybe to continue with your current prioritization.
David.
So just on the record, I'm finishing up here. Let's be honest from now on, and that we would say that, yes, we would like...
I appreciate that, David, and I also just want to say, I have before me a flyer that you passed out this evening, which disregards that this was a board vote that was taken by our entire board with the exception of the 2 new members, but only places blame on me for what you believe grievances are and gives out my personal cell phone number. So
Well,
I
school
so
board-
appreciate the work that the teachers do. You know my leadership style, and that I can respectfully disagree, and I will always ask to come back to the table. But giving out my personal cell number and acting as if I am the only person making these votes, I think is very unfair.
Okay, well, I will also say, and I
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
that
Thank you.
you're the board president, and you
Thank you,
made
Mr.
made
Fisher.
these
I
things, and
appreciate it.
people need to be able to get a hold of you. I also
Thank you,
was
Mr.
standing here,
Fisher.
and you guys brought my son's name into and his where I was with him on a
Mr.
board
Fisher,
meeting.
thank you.
No, just because you did it to everyone, and we need to just be honest. Is all I'm saying, and we
And
would
that's
appreciate
what I
it
was
from
asking
now
as
on.
well.
If every board that talks about, every board member talks about our benefits, just admits that you already have a savings, that it
Thank
goes
you,
to the
Mr.
students.
Fisher. I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
your time.
Appreciate it.
Good evening, board members. Anna Molander. I've done a lot of thinking about what you're about to face tonight, and it really became clear to me recently on a field trip with my daughter at the Challenger Museum. At the Challenger Museum, they simulate a Mars landing, and all around them are reminders in the story about the Challenger disaster. The Challenger disaster was caused by a politically expedient decision. They decided to launch before they looked at the evidence. All the evidence said abort. And I'm asking you to do that tonight. You need to abort your launch on the decisions you're about to make. The evidence doesn't support it. If you talk to anybody broadly in the community, from business leaders to parents to students, they know that laying off teachers and laying off other employees is the worst possible decision you can make in a financial crisis. What do companies do when they face a financial crisis? They do not cut their line workers that are making their cars. They cut at HQ. That's what groups that businesses that survive do, and we all know that. As a community, and I ask you to go out and take some time, have a special meeting. You've done several of them recently. We would like you to agendize those, by the way. Go out and ask the community. Go and talk to your business leaders, because I'm going to tell you, they think you're making the wrong decision tonight. You can do better. You can balance the budget after you fix your spending. You know it's the right decision to save our teachers, save our schools, save our employees their jobs. And I beg of you, all of you, by pink slipping, by laying off people tonight, you're balancing the budget on the backs of our children, the children that are there today.
Thank you,
And I
Ms.
ask you to
Molander.
please go and look at the evidence. You don't have all the evidence.
Thank you, Ms. Molander. Moving on to item 9.1, approving the 2018-19 second interim financial report. Dr. Quinto?
Well, good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, board members. Here to present with my colleagues the second interim financial report. Okay. We'll be covering the second interim summary, multi-year projections, fiscal condition, and also what was passed out in the back, our student-centered fiscal recovery plan. So high level, revenues are slightly up, expenditures are down, business isn't usual. We are installed a purchasing committee, put a purchasing committee together, looking at expenditures, so you'll see that in our financials later, that expenditures are down, but they still exceed our revenues. Enrollment has declined below the projections that were the budget was built on in July. So for our total general revenues, unrestricted and restricted, we have $534 million, of which about $400 million is for local control funding formula.
Neither of them.
What I'd like to do is explain some of the variances between first interim, what we brought, and what we're bringing today. You're going to see $1.7 million. We received a low-performing student grant, so you'll see the increase in the federal lines. Title II is up at $35,000, and Title I is up $2.2 million. Going on to unrestricted expenditures, general fund. You'll see its salary and benefits are $316 million. We are still at 91%. I think that's a report FICMAT also brought out as a concern. Moving on to the variance from first interim to second interim, to call out some of the just the differences. It's not, like I said, business as usual. There's a conservative effort with our purchasing committee to drive down our costs in all areas. So what you're seeing here, I'm very proud to stand before you that we have $1.2 million in reductions based on those efforts. Moving on to restricted funds. And you'll have to excuse my voice, I've been not feeling well. Restricted expenditures from first interim to second interim. You're seeing increases. That actually is a good sign. That means we're using restricted dollars, not unrestricted dollars. Things here would be Title I and SIG. That's why your salaries are up in the restricted. Here under services, you'll have the low-performing student grant. You'll bring in revenues, but you also have to book the expense. On to our total general fund by function. One of the things that has been talked about is, I only have 3 minutes, ma'am?
No, you have 6 minutes. I don't see the
Well, to continue, the slide would show that our general administration, with the work done by our leadership, we've reduced it to 4%. Moving on to your multi-year projections. Oh, there we go. So there you see the 4%. Our multi-year projections, our average daily attendance continues to decline. In fact, like I said, in July when we built the budget, it was enrollment was projected to be at 40,852. It actually came in at 40,660. So as we look to the future, we're looking for our average daily attendance to decline in the same manner. So you're seeing the figures for 1920 and 2021 that were used for our multi-year projection assumptions. You'll see the cost of living adjustment. We go with what the current values that we get. We use school services data dashboard to use that as our Bible as to what to put for our assumptions, and currently that's at 3.46%. You'll see what that revenue increases are for 1920. Unfortunately for us, it's netted against a decrease for enrollment. Our lottery projected in our multi-year projections are 151 for ADA for unrestricted and 53 for restricted. I want to take us back to October 31st when the first interim budget was brought forward and all the work that was done, and really want to call out Ms. Ryland, our fiscal advisor. She's very supportive. She's vetting numbers, arduous work, and we were able to get it to $15.8 million in 1920 and $67 million in 2021, our remaining shortfall. Superintendent's charged us to continue working, just not business as usual. And before we go on, what I'd like to do is tell you some of the other projections that are going to be in the multi-year. We have a PERS increase of $1.1 million. Health is up in 1920 to in 2021 at 2.3 million and 2.4. These are some of the assumptions that will go into that. Special ed has been increased $9 million about in both years. But I don't want to focus on that. What I'd like to do is have Gloria tell you about some of the great work we're doing to offset those expenditures.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto. Good evening, President Ryan, members of the board. Some of the changes between our first interim and second interim multi-year, due to LCFF bringing in the governor's revised proposed budget in January, we have an increase of about $3.8 million. For the STRS buy down, they proposed decreasing the STRS rate by about almost 1%, a little over 1%, so that'll save us about $1.7 million. Another key change is due to the reduction in force, that will be a saving about $5.1 million between the first interim and second interim, and we continue to look for other savings.
So some of the work, the arduous work that's happening. All of that being said, what that has, and I'm proud to bring you a multi-year projection that shows that hard work, and you're seeing now in 1920, that 15 million has been reduced to 2.2. And in 2021, that's at 50. Fiscal condition, I have to certify, my recommendation is certify negative because we will, although we're able to meet our financial obligations this year, you have to be able to meet them in the subsequent years, and at this point, I don't have a high level of confidence we could do that yet. Negative certifications, went through that. We've been appointed a fiscal advisor, and SCOIA has stay and rescind authorization. So what are our next steps? We've taken a lot of steps already. Real quickly, we had to true up the budget. We did position control. We had a figment health analysis. We've been taking steps moving forward that have resulted in that 2.2. So I'm going to quickly touch on some of these. But I think reviewing contracts centrally, a position process that we put into place. And one of the things that I enjoyed doing was helping be part of a team that integrated our SIPs and our LCAP and our budget this year, that allowed us to do our one-stop staffing better, and it was more student-centered. So those are the actions that have been taken to date. So our next step, it's mid-year, so you start doing mid-year expenditure projections, where you're going to land. You start looking at those for opportunities to reduce budgets. We're also having outlier reports starting to come in, working with our financial experts. We have the charters and the workers' compensation and transportation that we're reviewing, and we'll have those reports to bring and recommend to the superintendent by the end of the month. And we also have a student-centered fiscal recovery plan. Some highlights: 91% of our budget, again, is for salaries and benefits. The average is 85%. We're 6% higher than the average of the state. Taken together, unable to fund programs, activities, and essential services, severely limiting our district's ability to advance equity, access, and social justice. With that, part of the interim budget was to also introduce our student-centered fiscal recovery plan. On the back table is printed out our narrative of what that looks like. It's been shared with you. I'm going to highlight a couple of areas there. The first is I think the woman who came to spoke about what do good leaders and private industry do. She was correct. That's what you do. So at the top of what we're doing is central office reductions. So thank you for that. Healthcare parity with our sister districts, and also a vision of shared sacrifice by all. So that's what you'll see in the narrative of the student-centered fiscal recovery plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Quinto. Do we have public comments on this item?
So we have 7 public comments. If you can line up in the order you hear your name called. Liz Guillen, followed by Bob James, Josefina Ramirez-Natsene, Marisol Aviña, Marlene Garcia, Cecile Nunley, and Rosa de Anda.
2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Guillen.
Good evening, President Ryan, board members, and Superintendent Aguilar. I'm Liz Guillen with Public Advocates. We very much appreciate the difficult decisions that will have to be made, ranging from reductions to programs and services for students to changes in employee benefits. Your community budget updates and, of course, your resolution tonight make clear that you're currently negotiating with your employee unions, and we offer guidance as you make these challenging decisions. Although collective bargaining is a confidential bilateral process between the district and its collective bargaining unions, how agreements are funded are subject to the public local control accountability process. So the district must engage with stakeholders, including presenting proposed changes in the LCAP as a result of any reallocation of LCFF dollars, and that must be done before new agreements are entered into. And that must be done at minimum to the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee and the District English Learner Advisory Committee. There would need to be a showing of increase or improvement to the extent supplemental and concentration funds are used. And the district would have to clearly demonstrate that any changes in actions, again, are principally directed towards and effective in meeting your goals for high-need students. The same standard that was currently used in developing the LCAP also has to be used when you make changes to it, and particularly when you're using supplemental and concentration funds. Given the extent of cuts you might have to make, I think this is very important. Thank you very much. You have my letter.
Actually, Ms. Guillen, I looked right before the board meeting, you had sent out an email and the attachment was not on the email.
I
So-
resent it.
Okay, wonderful.
I resent it.
Thank you so much.
And I passed you a hard copy as well.
I appreciate it, Ms. Guillen.
Good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and board members. Bob Hamas of Making Sense Work here. And as Ms. Guillen said, we want to recognize the difficulty of our situation and the work that Dr. Quinto and his staff are doing and the decisions that the board has to make. As most of you are aware, MCW is still looking for just more information.
Yes.
I mean, we understand that there's a lot going on, but we think a lot of more specifics about what exactly is being done in what detail. So some of the questions I would have, there's been a number of reductions over the last few months thrown out. Most recently, we were reminded at the Fiscal Transparency and Accountability meeting of between adopted and first interim, there was about 20 million in savings that were identified, but it's not clear where those are in the reports. If you look at the first interim and the second interim, we don't really see 20 million in savings. And then other things that are being talked about, both in the FCMAT report and that we think should be addressed, and in what detail are they being addressed, things like we heard that all management went through one-stop staffing this year, but what sort of training is management receiving, not just this year, but moving forward to make sure that they're actually monitoring their budgets, that they understand how to evaluate them during the course of the year, to make any changes in their budgets, and also to develop budgets for the following year, so we don't see budgets simply being flopped and money just being put into accounts with no real plan to spend it. Other areas real quick that we'd like to see information on, both Mike Fine and Superintendent Gordon have identified the 4,000s, 5,000s, and 6,000s as opportunities to save money. So we would love to have more information about what sort of analysis is being done in those areas to look for savings.
Thank you. We appreciate your work in this regard.
Thank you.
Ms. Garcia?
Good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. My name is Marlene Garcia, and I am a community member. I've had children who have gone to the Sacramento City Unified Schools in the past, and I'm really deeply concerned with what I've been reading in the newspaper and what is happening with the schools. I am here in support of the resolution because I believe, and I'm not here to tell you how to do your jobs. You're all elected and you're representatives of us. And you know that these are critical times and hard decisions, and you have some very hard decisions before you. I'm here to say, as a community member, I urge all parties to come to the table and to really negotiate in good faith, because it doesn't seem that there are any easy decisions, and there are a lot of difficult circumstances that have emerged because of different enrollment patterns, budget patterns, and a lot of different things. All I'm here to say is, please come to the table, all stakeholders, all parties who have the responsibility to make some sacrifice on behalf of the children. So this is, as a community member, I will say again, I urge you to take that responsible path forward and to do something that is really going to be in the best interests of our community and of our economy, and most importantly, of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia.
Hi, Josefina Ramirez Natsna. Thank you all for the work that you do, the difficult decisions and the difficult things that you're considering now. I'm here as a concerned parent. I'm a student. My daughter is at Matsuyama. And I just wanted to let you all know, and everyone here in the room, that the future of our city and of the economic development and vitality of our city is at stake. The kids are our future. The inequities and challenges our students face will grow even larger. We must do everything to save our schools from state takeover. The receivership should not be an option. Everyone needs to be at the table to discuss making shared sacrifice to support the responsible plan to fund healthcare savings. And I think that the focus is being lost. It's a lot of the adults focusing on the adults, and we should focus on our youth. And I think that the implications of what a state receivership means for this district are huge. There will be a mass exodus of kids. Those families that can will take their kids out. The families that can't, which is the majority of this district, will remain. And I think that the inequities will grow larger. So please think about our entire district as a whole and think about making sure that our communities are served by, the loyal teachers and parents, and that we all come to the table together and work on making a solution to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Aguilar and President Ryan and members of the board. First, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you do. These are difficult situations, and I know they're tough, and you're stepping up to the plate to make those hard decisions, and I want to thank you all for that. I come to you as a member of the community. My children went to Sacramento City Schools. My grandchildren, 3 of them now, are in college, and they attended Sacramento City Schools. So I'm a big supporter of what we do here in Sacramento with the children. I think it would be a terrible, catastrophic thing to do to children in Sacramento if you had this county or had a takeover, a receivership of the district. I urge you to work responsibly with everybody. I'm sure you will, and try and find a solution to this problem so that that option is not on the table. And again, thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you. Ms. Nunley?
Yes. Good evening, board members. One of the things that I was noticing when I looked at this, when it comes to the multi-year, and I'm looking on page 42 of the item, also on slide 12, one of the things that struck me was your ADA is going down about 1,000 students, which is pretty significant. And if I'm not mistaken, 1,000 students, that's 30 or more classrooms, actually, which means that you would need 30 less teachers right off the bat just because enrollment went down. And that's just one of the things I do remember vividly last year, that enrollment was projected to be flat, and I know there was different people and what have you. But I do think it's one of the critical things, and I will ask the board again, we need to have some type of presentation on enrollment and how our enrollment is trending, because that forecasts what's going forward. It also helps with all of the expenditures and revenue and where we are going and all of that. The other thing that I am noticing is that we are still, or you are still on the multi-year, you're still projecting in the unrestricted, which is the one where you need your reserves, deficit spending of $20 million this year and deficit spending of $29 million next year, and then it increases to $47 million. Those are still pretty significant numbers, and I understand that there was a narrative of a plan, but we still have yet to see where we're putting all of those numbers together. And I am interested, and I think as a member of the public and community, we have a right to see those things. And I also would encourage, I know this is very difficult times for you, but rather than just wait for a state takeover, that should not be in anybody's vocabulary. That is a cowardly way of taking out. You have an obligation as members of the public. We voted you in so that you could make those tough decisions. So state takeover is not an option and should never be on the table.
Thank you, Ms. Nunley, and thank you for your service on the African American Achievement Task Force.
Good evening, Board Member Ryan, members of the board, Superintendent Aguilar. My name is Marisol Viña, and I'm here also as a member of the community. First of all, want to appreciate all of you and the work that you're doing. Thank you for your service. I know that you have very difficult decisions in front of you, and I just want to appreciate you for that. But I am concerned about the status of the district and concerned for the children, but also the economy and our community as a whole. We know that a state takeover would disproportionately impact students of color, low-income students. That is the reality of it, and we cannot allow that to happen. I believe that we should all come to the table, all parties should come to the table to find a solution. State takeover should not be a solution. And really believe that all children should have equitable access to a quality education and equal opportunity for them to be successful. And so really just want to urge everyone that there is a path forward. There is a responsible plan that I think we can all come to agreement on with shared sacrifice. That is the reality. There's no other dollars that we can find to make up those deficits, and we just need to come together and find a responsible solution for our students. We owe that to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marisol. Do we have any other public comments?
No further public comments.
Thank you. So with that, we'll go ahead and take board member questions and comments. I had a few that I'd like to begin with. So Mike Fine, when he presented to us, and Dave Gordon with SCOE has also validated this, in looking at the root source of our budget deficit, he identified a series of things. He identified increasing healthcare costs and having obligations that exceeded our revenues, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. They identified declining enrollment, but they also identified a real issue around our average daily attendance, and you have elements of this throughout the report. And then finally, beyond these items, the most astonishing, I think, finding within the FCMAT report and also in follow-up with SCOE was around the special education expenditures. Obviously, we have a moral and legal obligation to meet the needs of this critical student population, but we saw a significant growth in our special education expenditures, such that we are expending in this fiscal year $60 million above our revenue. And so that alone is our multi-year budget deficit. And so I want to start there and ask how we are projecting implementing policies to draw down that special education liability and meet the needs of our students who deserve to have high quality special education services. And if we are taking into account for this budget and moving forward the ability to do early intervention and assessment to reduce the need for special education services down the line. That's the first one. Sorry.
No. Do you want me to answer one at a time? Actually, with anything, I think it's important to know where you've been. So there was a history done. Working with our fiscal advisor, we had to know where we were at, what are our expenses. So the history tells us kind of trending where it's at. And so our trends were trued up. When we finished, when we put the budget together in July, our budget was $113 million in special education, but our actuals came in at $114 million. So that's one of the areas that are using three-year past averages to project what you're going to spend next year. And so that was trued up. To be frank, I'm not an expert in special education. So what I can do is go out and surround myself with experts that understand the programs and the systems, because I do know at a high level that we have 367 non-public school students. Our rate of our 7,000 students, I think our rate is 16% for identifying. I know that's high.
367 non-public school students right now
Or
that are counted within that total expenditure.
About 7,000 there, and then there's 367 who are non-public school. So with that, reached out with our partners, Terry Ryland, can we get Dr. Gillespie in here? And so there was a conversation had so we can actually go in and look at that with an expert's eyes and come back and be able to tell you, these are the things we can do to right the ship in that arena.
But these are likely longer-term savings, not savings that we can implement this year.
I don't know the answer until we get the report back.
So I want to talk about the declining enrollment, and obviously this is listed out. I actually lost my tab on the page within the full report, but there has been some discrepancy around the declining enrollment numbers that I have seen based on the new cohort model that's being adopted, which seem quite reasonable to me based upon the fact that the LAO report has come out with a projection on declining enrollment across the state, and we certainly have seen that within the district, with the exception of 1 year of enrollment being flat. And so I saw numbers that reflected around a 300 decline in enrollment. And then there was one that looked like it was an error listing out a drop of 1,000 in average daily attendance and enrollment. So can you talk about the difference between those two?
The difference between those two? I'm familiar with the 300. Decision Insight is a company that we contracted with to do the mathematical or the cohort survival method. They bring back 2 reports. One is a conservative model, which you use to staff on. The other one is a moderate report, which you use to help with facilities, student housing, and things of that nature. It was their projections that we would lose 348 students the next year. Round numbers, about 1% going out year after. The 1,000, I'm not sure what you're referring to. I'd have to research that and get back to you.
Yeah, so I think that was a number that was being referenced somewhere. I've seen it now twice. Enrollment projections say that we're losing nearly 1,000. I haven't been able to find that outside of what was referenced again by Bob this evening in the interim report. So if this is a discrepancy, certainly want to ensure that it's corrected so that we have accurate data to work with. I support this idea of adopting a cohort model, and I think it's consistent with what I've heard as best practices in other districts, but I really want to ensure that the 300 plus number is what we're looking at, and that other number was an outlier, and I'm not sure where that came from. A couple other last items. I want to know, we have struggled, and this was noted by both SCOE and FICMAT, with our ability to ensure that students come to school, right? And we know that has impacted us heavily, impacted our budget, impacted us because we lag behind other regions in the state in our ability to ensure that we're reducing chronic absenteeism. And so how are we calculating, based upon our multi-year projections, the effects of our Be Here campaign? And are we, in fact, taking that into account at all in looking at our average daily attendance?
As we integrate our process, I think those factors will come more to being in our decision-making moving forward. But those are not things that the cohort model would take into consideration. But they would be factors, obviously. I would talk to Dr. Willsby with, here's some things that we're doing. But overall, central limit there in play comes into play. Average of average over time tend to be true. So as we continue these types of great programs for our students and increase their average daily attendance, you'll see that increase in our revenue as well. And
What we're saying is we won't see it in the immediate. This is going to
No.
have to be, once again, a longer-term strategy to grow ADA
Yes.
in out years. Okay, so that's helpful. And then my last question, and then I'll take questions from other board members. I won't deal with the benefit and obligation. I think we know healthcare costs have increased. Obviously, this is reflected in the report, and we know that our obligations exceed our revenues. But I do want to ask a question about the governor's budget. I know that much has been made on the potential of having some additional monies for special education and some ability to delay our obligation to contribute to retirement. And so wanted to know if that was taken into account in this report, and if in fact that was allowed to be taken into account by the County Office of Education so that we have an accurate sense of the total dollars with which we have to make reductions.
the answer is yes, and we're waiting. The yes part is we did take the governor's proposal for COLA, which is 3.46, so that was added to the multi-year projections, which added about $3 million, round numbers, to our multi-year. The STIRS contribution, or the pay down of that, will attribute about $1.7 million for us in the next coming years, and thereafter it's about 0.5%. So those two factors were taken into consideration and part of our multi-year. I'm in agreement with Scoey. I think it's a little bit, and my colleagues, as I've reached around and talked to Jenny and Sweetwater and some other folks, that it's too early to bank on or to book special ed at this point in time. I mean, it's something that we'll keep our eye on, but it's not something that I would bank on. So it's something also I think that the fiscal advisor and the county would stand behind us and say, yes, don't do that. I think it's too much of a risk at this time.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Quinto. I think that concludes my questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Board Member Garcia. I do just want to say, closing out that statement, I know that we cannot count upon the January governor budget proposal materializing. I mean, by process alone, we hope that those items will be in the May revise, and then finally in the budget adopted in June by the legislature. So I am aware of that, but I hope that it will lead to some additional revenue.
Thank you, Board President Ryan. I am concerned that the governor's budget proposal would be considered as revenue that we have on our hands, because there's a very long budget process and there are a lot of competing pressures and priorities that I would not want for us to consider those revenues as something we have in the bank, because so many things can happen. So as I hear that we're counting on possible savings of $3 million and 1.7, it just makes me nervous. Because I've seen how January budget proposals by January and by adoption are very different. So I just want to caution on that. But moving on to my questions, so thank you. You had mentioned some budget assumptions that changed from first interim and second interim, some revenue that came in through maybe some grants, the low performing student block grant, additional revenue coming in. I'm wondering if you're seeing any trends that are either in our favor in terms of bringing additional dollars, or any trends that work against us where we're seeing maybe our budget hole increase.
You want to answer? I'll give you Gloria Chung.
So we're seeing mainly trends in, as we've discussed, lowering of our enrollment, our ADA. So unfortunately, that's not a good picture. So the federal funding at the moment looks flat. So, but then anything can happen at the federal level. So as our enrollment declines, our ADA declines, and that too will play into the possibility of our unduplicated counts. But we are having a concerted effort to increase our unduplicated counts, and that won't bring up our revenue.
So since you've mentioned the unduplicated count, I know that the report highlighted an area of opportunity to better identify unduplicated students. What strategies are you using to properly identify our students? I'm concerned that we are not identifying them. Therefore, we're not drawing down the dollar amount that we need to draw down from the state so that we can serve and meet their needs.
Actually, when I first got here, my colleagues helped me do a study, and we looked at the demographics of the city, direct certification from the county, and we actually align really well with LA. And there are unduplicated counts in the 80s, so it's an area of growth that thought for us. And actually, when I came in, I was very happy to hear of the efforts and the focus we were done, and actually that was led by Elliot. And so could I bother Mr. Lopez to come speak about his great work on unduplicated count?
So this year, we made a concerted effort to identify as many students for inclusion within our LCFF unduplicated counts as possible. And that included a significant collaborative undertaking that involved a number of different departments. We reached out to parents in a phone banking campaign and tried our best to ensure that every student in the district submitted an LCFF application, with the result of increasing the number of students that we identified this year versus last year by over 1,500 students.
Are we also looking at applications for free and reduced lunch and cross-referencing or geo-mapping maybe throughout our city? I'm just trying to think of ideas where.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so as you're aware, students can qualify for LCFF via a number of different methods. And so the students that we were looking to identify were those who did not already qualify via another method. So we did exhaust all of the other mechanisms before then seeking out those additional students who we thought might qualify.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have another question?
I do have several more, so just be patient. Thank you. It was a very large document, so I just had a lot of questions, but you've asked plenty of them, so I will skip those. I just think the other ones are important to ask as well. So just wondering, the difference between first interim and second interim reports, the assumptions change, trends change as well. I'm wondering, how does that affect our cash flow? Because in my head, I have this date of November 2019. That's like Armageddon for me, right? And I just want to know, week to week, month to month, how are we moving towards that date? And my hope is that, and I'm working hard as all my colleagues are too, to make sure that state receivership is not an outcome for us. Mm-hmm. So, but I'd like to know how these assumptions, changes, and trends, how does that affect the cash flow?
Actually, the expert here in that arena would be Amari Watkins.
Good evening, members of the board and Superintendent Aguilar. We actively are monitoring our cash flow with all expenditures that we make as well as revenues received. We also receive weekly reports from the county treasury on what's in the bank and monitor it practically daily to make sure that we're staying on track. We incorporate the projections and changes made by the budget department and compare it to our actuals to make sure that we're on target and that we notify everybody involved of any changes that would be of concern. But that is an active engagement of our department and of the district at this time.
Is there any scenario where that November date that we've identified running out of cash, not we, but FICMAT, can come any sooner than November?
With the expected projections that have already been presented, we don't foresee that at this time. With as presented at first interim and that date, we've made steps towards improving our fiscal position that have not allowed that to be the case from what we've seen thus far.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to talk a little bit about, you know, everything we've talked about are reducing our expenditures, and I get that, right? We don't have the revenue, the adequate level of revenue to afford what we're spending our dollars on. So I understand that. But I also don't, maybe I'm not aware of it. Maybe we're just not talking about it at this time because we're so focused on reducing expenditures, a plan for that. But I don't hear us talking about a plan to increase our revenue. And there's some work being done in terms of identifying students that may not have been identified as unduplicated, but I'd like to see what other areas or what other opportunities we have here locally to increase our revenue, whether it's here at the district, whether it's talking about generating new dollars at the local level in our community. We can't cut our way out of this fiscal mess. We just can't. We're going to decimate our entire school district if we do that. We also can't expect billions of dollars more from the state. It's just that's a bigger, longer problem in order to raise revenues at the state level. So I want for us to focus on what is it that we're doing here locally. We need to help ourselves too. When I'm looking at the at your presentation, it's all about cuts, and I want to know, what are we doing to bring in additional dollars? What conversations are we having? Whether it's within the district, it's outside of the district with our community partners, we need to raise revenue, because this just helps us stay solvent. It doesn't help us restore classes. It doesn't help us rescind the preliminary notices for layoffs. It doesn't help us restore our programs. It doesn't help us grow our programs. That's what I want to do.
And I do think, Member Garcia, on that note, we might want to consider directing the superintendent to look at a timeline for establishing a blue ribbon commission with that dedicated charge of trying to figure out a path towards increasing revenues. I think there is some tremendous talent in Sacramento who have done that in other regards in both K-12 and higher education. And so I think that would be worth our time and energy.
Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Member Morowski.
Thank you, Board President Ryan. And on the suggestion to establish a blue ribbon commission, I would actually, I like that idea, and I would actually suggest we consider making it a little broader, not just to look at revenues, but to look at resources that we can. Is the mic okay?
I can't hear well, but it's okay.
That we should look at resources that we can bring into our district, also through partnerships with other governmental agencies or community partners as well. That we should take a broad look at how we can serve our students.
Absolutely agreed.
Thank you. So with that, I have probably several questions on the budget. So we can hopefully try to do it in a sort of rapid fire way. And if you need to take it back, then you can take it back and just tell me that you need to come back with the answer. So I think it's important first to know where we are in terms of our overall. We've been talking about having to cut $35 million per year over the next 2 years. Is that still true? Because it looks like our multi-year projection is in a better place now. So can you address that?
Address?
So for next year, we need to reduce about 2.3 million, if I remember correctly, and then it'll be about 50 million.
So over two, we've been thinking about it as over 2 years issue,
It'll be about
correct?
50 million.
So our
which is down from the 66 million from first interim.
Okay.
So it's quite a large drop.
Okay, so basically our overall savings target has been reduced quite a bit to, we were talking about 70, maybe it's 50 to 55, depending on needing some wiggle room in there. But I think that's important to understand, and I thank you so much for your work on this, to identify and turning over all the rocks we can to make that number go down in terms of our overall savings target, because that's a huge difference.
Important note on that, like it was 15 and 67 million. So with the work, we've been able to bring it down, but that's making sure we hold all expenses static.
And we will look to you to.
Well, there's unfunded mandates. We don't have control over certain, like if they reduce COLA, it's going to reduce revenue. If they.
Oh, absolutely. It's all projections, correct.
Just making sure that, want to make that call. Thanks.
Yeah, and to follow on to Board Member Garcia and Board President Ryan's point on the dollars that are from LCFF and from the CalSTRS buy down, that's almost $5 million of sort of fiscal risk until we really know that money's in the bank. I would agree with that. Okay. Can I ask you again on the cash flow issue? We learned that we were not going to run out of cash sooner than November 28, 2019. And obviously, we're in a better place now. So can you address whether our cash position has changed? Are we still looking at 2019? Is there more analysis being done on that?
I'd like to say that we are doing additional analysis because this is such a critical area that we've been talking around, that we are working with SCOE to make sure that our numbers are as accurate as possible, and we have a target in the next 2 weeks to have fine-tuned that information.
Okay, great. So we could expect a cash flow update at the next board meeting?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. Back on the point of enrollment projections, I think, again, this is critical to our ADA projections over the next 2 years. So it is on page 104. I don't know if you have a copy of the budget document in front of you. But in the criteria and standards review, there's a page on enrollment. And what I see in here in the second interim is 40,000, this is for 2018-19, 40,660 projected enrollment. And it's page 104 of 130, I guess, in the packet. So for 40,660, and in 1920, you're looking at 39,515. And so that's a drop of over, it's like 1,100. So that doesn't seem to match up with the other number that we were talking about. So I understand you may have to take that back to see how those numbers reconcile. So if you could just look into that and make sure that we're basing all of our budget assumptions on the correct enrollment projections. Okay, thank you. On the we talked about the 4,000s and the 5,000s. So the 4,000s are books and supplies. The 5,000s are services and other operating expenditures. I think this is an area that we've been talking about looking at to save dollars, and so I just wanted to reiterate that I would like to see some focus on looking at those areas for the 1920 and the 2021 fiscal year. So hopefully we can look and see if there are savings there. On page 1, I may be looking at a different document, but there is a required contribution to maintenance accounts, the routine required maintenance contribution. It looked to me like the number was around 12 million or so that we were contributing, and it was 11 million that was required. So it just looked like we were contributing a higher level than required, and I had a question of whether I was reading that right, or do we have flexibility to reduce that and save that million?
In 2007-8, actually that's I know it as routine restricted maintenance. It was 3% of your total general fund, and that was set aside to make sure that school districts maintain the facilities for student learning. In 2007-8, the state flexed that because of economic times, and so you were able to reduce that. So to answer your question is yes, from 2007-8 till 2018. In fiscal year 1920, the 3% comes back into full effect, and so we are forced to, we're here to do our obligation to fully fund routine restricted maintenance to maintain our buildings for our students.
Okay.
So that's why you see the increase. So it was flexed down from 3% to the amount you've seen. There is what they call a maintenance of effort, so you have to continue to fund at a certain level. But next year that will be rising to 3%. I think Kathy's probably grinning really wide because that's restricted dollars.
Is that?
And
Okay, so that is at the minimum 3%, correct?
you could, the board could elect to or decide to put more.
Okay, but
we
we're
currently-
already at the minimum. There's
We're at
no
the minimum.
flexibility to lower that.
Yeah, the same thing would be with deferred maintenance. That would be for, there's no money put there.
Okay, yeah, no, I guess because I was looking at, it said required minimum contribution, 1.11.2, and then it said second interim contribution, 12.2. So maybe it's just a matter of, the verbiage here. Okay. I would like to ask about our OPEB costs. That's other post-employment benefits for the audience. Can you clarify the dollar amounts of the pay-as-you-go cost for 1920 and 2021? I see in the budget, it looks like it's 16.5 million, the same as 1819. 16.5 million, 16.5 million, 16.5 million. Is that cost growing or is that actually static as it's reflected here
Ms. Watkins?
over the next 2 years?
Ask for visual. What page was that? 125?
I have it on 125, but I think that maybe the updated, oh no, must have gotten a different.
No, I see it here.
It's
Yes,
the page
these
with
are presented as static based on the information that we have. There was a question that was raised about the other figures, and those were based on actuarial assumptions made by our actuary that projected increases in benefit costs and potential eligible retirees. But on other data that we have, that's what we're projecting at this point with the benefit costs that we know to be true.
Okay, so we don't think that there is any increase in benefit costs for OPEB. It's staying about flat.
The trend has been in the last several years that it's stayed pretty static.
Okay.
Even though we are analyzing that and working with our partners regarding those figures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Morosky. Looks like we don't have any other board member questions at this time. I do just want to thank Ms. Ryland, our fiscal advisor, for all of the time and energy she's putting into working quite closely with our staff, as well as County Superintendent, for having such an open and constant dialogue with us to ensure that this work is done to the best of our ability under this difficult timeline. I also do want to call out that we have removed the cash flow item from our second interim financial report so that we can, working with the Sacramento County Office of Education over the next 2 weeks, ensure the fidelity of the data in moving that item forward.
Thank you.
Moving on to item, oh, sorry. I have to move from conference to action. Second. All student board member preferential vote?
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. Any
Move the item.
opposed? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any, student preferential vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The motion carries. Moving on to item 9.2, approving resolution number 3058, resolution to eliminate certificated employees due to reduction of particular kinds of services. We're going to have a 5-minute action and presentation, although I certainly would encourage more discussion than that, and we can run late on these very important items. I do want to say, just in opening this up, we are very aware that these are preliminary notifications based on Ed Code, and I want to just reiterate that these notifications can be rescinded as we continue to work through the process of trying to find the savings necessary to reduce the $35 million budget deficit, and that we are fully committed to, following tonight, doing a series of community conversations to prioritize how we get to that place of fiscal solvency.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, members of the Board, Superintendent Aguilar. I'm Concy McCarn, the Chief Human Resource Officer, and with me is Cindy Nguyen, the Employee Relations Director. In tonight's presentation, we would, with a heavy heart and certainly knowing this are extremely difficult times, again this week bringing to you particular kinds of service reduction. known as the PKS, in order to address the district's budget deficit by reducing district management costs. And as President Ryan mentioned, what is being recommended here, you have Exhibit A, the Exhibit A with the resolution that identifies the specific management positions as noted. Again, the commitment is to include management in the shared portion of the necessary cuts that need to be made, and that some of these management positions, certificated management positions, have rights back to the classroom, which is why you notice some teaching positions noted on the particular kinds of service exhibit. A summary of what you have before you includes 3 vacant positions, includes about 12 central office admin positions, and additional, as I said, classroom positions based on what certificated management has rights to based on ed code. So this, for your consideration, and again, we realize this is very difficult, but a total of 28.2 with the intent, of course, we know that you have to rescind these as soon as possible. So next steps would be, by taking this action tonight, it is allowing us to ensure that the ed code timeline of March 15th is met. In order to do that, we have to analyze the impact to staff, what the reductions mean. We certainly take into account vacancies, as you can see, resignations, retirements, all of that in making, in completing the analysis for the final notices. From this process, certificated employees have the right to request a hearing. That hearing would take place in the month of April with an administrative law judge. After that process, we would come back to you with the final layoff notice recommendation based on what was approved prior to May 15th, which is the final. Again, part of why these particular ones are noted as preliminary.
Okay, thank you.
So with that, staff recommends approving this resolution after conversation.
Do we have public comment on this item?
Yes, we have 11 public comments. If you could come up in the order that you are called, please. Stan Bettis, followed by Phyllis Mosley, Cassandra Kelly Tillman, Melissa Alta, Linda Alta, Frederick Gotha, Janelle Jennings, Judith Arnold, Beth Curtis, Renee Webster Hawkins, and Nikki Malevsky.
Hi, good evening, Madam President, Mr. Superintendent, and board members. My name is Stan Perez. I'm a member of the community. I have no other dog in this fight other than I've been watching the news, and my heart is broken what's happening with our community, with our schools, and what it proposes to do if the layoffs go forward. I've read that upwards of 150 teachers and maybe 500 support staff may lose their positions. And it hurts my heart to think what they will do next. You know, it's kicking the can down the road to lay off people. I'm a retired executive for a large organization, and we went through such layoffs. We learned very quickly, you don't fix the problem. You're going to have people who won't be able to make their house payments and car payments. They're going to go on welfare. How are they going to pay for food, for gas? Some of them are going to move out of our community, and that's going to affect our economy. What does it do to our marker, Sacramento, and one of the largest economies in the world, our state, by losing talented teachers that have to move out of state or move out at least out of our communities? I think of the dollars that were spent by teachers to become educated, to be able to teach our children. And more importantly, I think that these teachers, as many of my teachers, were like family to me. They're very close to us. You know, we appreciate them dearly. You know, and so I would ask of all of you decision makers that, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that has gone into where we're at today. I don't appreciate how we got here today. Again, as a former executive for a company, I can't fathom not seeing this, projecting this, and letting us get to this point. But I'm confident that you're working on that. I will ask you this. I'll ask you humbly, I'll ask you sincerely and passionately that we not go forward with these layoffs, that we not eliminate one teacher position, that we not hurt our children, that we not hurt our community in this way. We love them passionately, our teachers and all our support staff. And whatever it is that you can do, we'd appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, Ms. Mosley.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your time. I'm addressing the board this evening for the nearly 500 families serviced by Sac City Unified School District Child Development Department, in particular the school age program. As you know, we are a before and after school program providing quality care for children pre-K to 6th grade. What may escape you is that we're more than just a school age program. We service children in EK at LDV in particular from pre-kinder classes and get these kids ready to be kindergarten ready. And I can say with assurance they are more than kindergarten ready by the time they leave our program. And we collaborate with teachers to enhance what's going on in the classroom. We do more than just offer care. We become part of our families. We care about our children deeply. We reach out to the communities to make sure that we're addressing the whole child, socially, academically, emotionally. We provide a lot more than just a before and school age program, and our parents know that. They can go to work assured that their children are with someone that truly cares. Our program is fee-based, so parents pay for those programs, and it's a little puzzling to me to hear that maybe we're not self-sufficient financially since it's fee-based, and our parents carry that program, and I've been a part of the program for nearly 30 years. And again, it puzzles me. And our children, we have a waiting list to get into our program, so it's not like our programs aren't solvent in regards to numbers. Parents put their children on the waiting list to enter many of our programs before the children are even born. And it would be a pity to have to turn around at some point and say there is no program. We're more than a regular school-age program that offers recreational care. We are an extension program that provides quality care to each and every parent and child that we service.
Leslie,
Thank you for your time tonight.
Hi, Ms. Cassandra.
Hello, good evening. I'm Cassandra Tillman, and I work for Leonardo da Vinci for the past 13 years as a teacher in the before and after school program, as well as a kindergarten enrichment time. During this time, I am facilitating the students in a math and language arts enrichment activities, as well as providing social wellness program for our students. My concern this evening is with the board's lack of transparency and honesty about my future at the district and the services along with my fellow teachers who work with the same grades, students, and family. I have some questions about activities going on at the board level. Are you at any stage preparing to lay off and close our fee-based programs? This saddens me greatly. Are you open for real, honest work with teachers in the classroom to help close the gap? We're ready to work with you and roll our sleeves up. If you're going to close our fee-based program, we want to know when, and we want to know why. My colleagues and I have presented to our manager a request to work with each other on programs and cost-cutting opportunities to maintain the programs that are in place. We extend that offer to the board to work with you, not against you. As you have so often mentioned that you are working on behalf of the children of Sac City Unified, if that is so, we look forward to working with you. Finally, it's with great sadness that we must come to this. However, over the past few weeks, it has become apparent that there has been no voice in our department. Management has put little or no effort into managing our programs. We are saddened and angry and feeling disregarded by individuals who we have come to respect and look for leadership. We have been self-managing our programs within the limits and guidelines, and with that, we look to find a better and more efficient method of managing the programs in the future. We ask that you hear us out before any final decisions are made.
Thank you, Ms. Cassandra.
Good evening. We'd like to request a partner our time, please. Thank you. My name is Melissa Ada. I am we are parents of twin first graders. And we're coming before you this evening as professionals in Sacramento, members of the community, and concerned parents. Our children currently attend Leonardo da Vinci Children's Center. And since kindergarten, since joining in kindergarten, they have had their lives transformed by the amazing women who just came before us. We have a daughter who has struggled with special needs, and it was because of Miss Mosley's attention and kindness and generosity that we were able to get our daughter into the Mind Institute to be assessed. This program is incredibly important to the parents that are involved, and these 4 locations serve, I believe, somewhere near 500 parents. The lack of transparency and communication to parents that the potential for the program to be disbanded has not been present. And in fact, I had to find out from a parent whose children go to a partnering school. When I called the district today and I was told that this was a possibility, I was shocked and disappointed because there was not the opportunity for parents to come forward tonight. There hasn't been appropriate communication, and it's concerning.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Ada, and I'm a parent at LDV, the first grade twins. And we have a real concern about how quickly this is being pushed through without the opportunity for folks to be able to talk to one another, parents to be able to communicate with each other, to have our concerns addressed. We pay for this program, and so I have a concern about how it could be cut if we're paying for the program and the program is full. It should be solvent. I recognize that you have a pretty thankless job and that it's not always convenient or helpful having all the feedback presented to you in such a way. I would ask that you give it your most diligent effort to work with everybody, all the adults in the room, to make sure that some sort of solution is come to, because we need these programs, these child care programs, child development programs. They're extraordinarily important, especially in identifying things in kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Board and President Ryan. I, too, am an LDV parent. I have 3 young daughters that attend that school, and I just want to commend Ms. Mosley and Ms. Cassandra over there. They run a fantastic program called the Children's Center, an after-school program at LDV that just allows us as parents to do very important work in the community. I've heard today that your sort of mantra here is like access, equity, and social justice. Just so you know what I do, I am the chief prosecutor in Sacramento County that prosecutes elder abuse. My wife runs the only African-American-centric counseling center in Sacramento County. And the way that we are able to do our jobs effectively is because of those 2 women over there that are able to watch our kids after school and before school and give them an enriching environment to learn and to bolster their educational experience. And so I'm just coming before you here today. I'm shocked. I did not expect to be up here discussing the existence of the Children's Center and other after-school programs like it until I found out that it was in danger today. And I came down here, and I've been sitting here for 2 or 3 hours. This is the first meeting I've ever been at. I did not expect to speak at all today, but I wanted you to know that it's really important, not just for those kids like mine that go to the Children's Center, but for all those parents that are able to do things in our community. Because you guys aren't the only one working on social justice and change and equity and access. Mm-hmm. There are other parents that are doing that as well on behalf of everybody in this community. I'm one of them. And the way I'm able to do that partially is through my kids being able to go to Children's Center. And I also want to, I see I have 10 seconds left. We do pay for this program. So I don't understand how it could be on the chopping block if it's a matter of raising additional funds, let's discuss that. But this is a funded program. It should not be cut, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, Board President Ryan and members of the board. My name is Janelle Jennings. This is my husband, Nathaniel Jennings, and our children are also here in the Child Care Center right next door. We are also LDV parents. Our daughter is a first grader at LDV K-8 school. Our main concern, along with the other parents here from LDV community tonight, is in regards to the budget cuts and expenditures in after-school programs. We would ask that you would reconsider closing down any of the after-school programs and also just taking into consideration how that would affect not only, the employees there, but also the community, parents like us, and most important, the children. Saying that it takes a village to raise a child is at the least. Many, if not most parents don't even have another option because we're at work. So we're working during the day, and as they pointed out, Miss Cassandra and Miss Mosley do, speak into our children's lives. We value them deeply. Please don't make our children or parents suffer due to previous bad decisions made by others that, none of us have any control over. So thank you so much for your time and letting us speak this evening.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Judy Arnold, and I am one of the 6 fee-based school-age child development teachers whose head is on the chopping block. And you have heard from my colleagues, Phyllis and Cassandra. I am the head teacher at the program at Theodore Judas School. I'm on par with them, and my school program has been open since 1986. The idea that any of us would be considered for furlough makes no sense to us at all, because our salaries, as you have heard from some parents that you just preceded me, are paid for by those parents. We have done the math, and we are certain that each site brings in far more money than we are paid. And even considering the staff salaries of our assistants, administrative support, and custodial costs, we more than earn our keep. Our managers tell us that despite our calculations, our programs cost more than they bring in. This is amazing to us. But by just exactly how much, they couldn't say. Our managers have informed us that they would actually prefer for us to remain in place and not be laid off because our programs serve the students so well. But they also told us that if we want to keep our centers open, that we need to find cost savings. And if we come up with a proposal that saves enough money, that maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to keep these programs open. Well, if it's truly necessary, we'll do that work. We will find the cost savings, and we'll close whatever gap exists. In fact, we've been working with our managers, and they've asked us to submit a proposal to them for cost savings. We're going to work together and do this, and it's due on Tuesday. We'll extend this extra effort because we are proud of our programs, and we are proud of the way that we care for children year after year after year.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments.
Good evening, honored board members and superintendent. My name is Beth Curtis. I'm the California Teachers Association Group Legal Services attorney who's been appointed to represent the teachers who you will give layoff notices to, including the 13 additional teachers in this board resolution. First, I want to clarify that there's no such thing as a precautionary layoff notice. If you give a teacher a layoff notice, you are starting a legal process that tells them that they don't have a job next year. They won't be able to pay their mortgage or buy their groceries. They can't act as if it's precautionary. With this additional resolution, that would bring the total of number of positions you're proposing to reduce to 163. Usually districts over notice in case you notice the wrong teachers. So we're talking about literally hundreds of layoff notices. When I looked at your enrollment figures tonight, I don't see a decrease. The January enrollment figures that are in the back of tonight's packet, when you add in the charter school numbers, show a total of 46,592 students. If you go to the California Department of Education website and you use the DataQuest tool and you pull up the district's 2017-2018 enrollment, which also includes charter school students, you see 46,595. There's only a difference of 3 students between the California Department of Education's 2017-2018 numbers and your current January enrollment numbers. And so I would ask you, based on that, to strongly reconsider both tonight's resolution for 13 certificated positions and the first resolution for the other positions. Even if you based your numbers on the worst numbers, which are on page 43 of your second interim report, that's where the 1,072 number is, that's 0.27%. 0.27% or of your certificated staff is 63, not 163.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your time.
Good evening, President Ryan and members of the board. I'm Renee Webster Hawkins, and I'm a parent of 2 boys in the district. Both boys are adopted out of foster care. Both boys are of color. One's African American and one's Asian Pacific Islander. One boy has special needs. The other is gifted, but suffers developmental trauma because of his young life before he joined my family. I look at the list of the specialties and the capacity, the expertise that's proposed to be eliminated. My boys are in the crosshairs. We know that students with disabilities are general ed students first. But in order for them to succeed, they need the support services, and the teachers need the support services and the professional development to be able to support those kids in the general ed classroom. So if we're talking about social emotional learning, we're talking about linked learning opportunities for kids who learn a little differently and want to take a less academic path to college and career. If we want to think about the incredible needs that our foster youth need, given their rough life to succeed in the educational environment, we're eliminating those support services. If we were a district that were doing well, or at least as well as other districts in these areas, okay. But we have a number of audits that tells us that we're not, that our kids are disproportionately suffering, especially our students with disabilities of color. So I would ask you, again, to consider this list. What I know based on my membership on the Community Advisory Committee and the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee is there hasn't been the advisement and consultation done that Ms. Guillen asked for when these kinds of changes are considered that might impact the LCAP goals. So thank you for your consideration and for engaging in the
Thank you,
consultation.
Ms. Hawkins.
Hi, Nikki Malevsky, the Sacramento City Teachers Association, and I put in my card to speak at the last item to help you, Ms. Ryan, because you were right. You did see 1,000 student drop reported in the budget documents from your staff. It's right here on page 42 of your budget document, and you see right here, your staff has reported in their budget document that you will be losing 1,000 students between this year and next year. Your staff is telling you that the layoffs are based on enrollment drops. This is really, really important. When you have the $52,000 consultant that you hired to tell you projections of enrollment telling you one number, you have your budget document prepared by your staff that they couldn't remember where it was, telling you one number, a different number. Ms. Morawski, good catch that also on page 104, your staff is telling you a different enrollment number. This is a big deal, a very, very big deal, and you should be given accurate information. Also wanted to point out in your budget documents, your first interim report of December 15th shows your number of administrators as 268 administrators. In the budget document your staff gave you today, March 7th, it's reporting you've gone up to 274 administrators. It is completely unacceptable to lay off teachers who give direct services to students, to cut child development services for our poorest kids based on inaccurate numbers and while you're increasing administrators.
Thank you, Ms. Mileski. I definitely want the administrative question answered, so maybe it's Concy with a combination. Hi, good evening.
Board members. Good evening, board members and board staff. My name is David Rose. Here on behalf of my second grader and first grader. I don't want to go through what everybody else has said already. I am concerned about the fact, at least as I understand it, and my understanding is based on the notice that I got and the transparency of the process as I saw it, which is the agenda item saying reduction of particular kinds of service. I don't quite know what that means. I've seen reductions of specific types of positions, but my understanding that I'm here to talk about is that this is elimination of one or all of the children's centers, as have been discussed already. Slide 4 of the presentation says that staff will be able to analyze the impacts of the staffing reduction. I suggest that that should have been done before that this was brought for adoption. Specifically, as others have said, if this is a user-funded program, then the question is, what are the savings from this and what are you getting out of these cuts? If it's something, I understand that, but alternatives I think need to be explored. My children, one of them going for 4 years and the other for 2 years to the Children's Center, have experienced a multi-grade curriculum where they get to interact with children across all of the grades, not just like they do in their classroom with their peers, but that increases their confidence and their readiness to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do in the classroom. I also think that the program that they're experiencing is multidiscipline program. My oldest child learned to read thanks to the teachers in the Children's Center. They're experiencing additional layers of safety. I'm sure you've seen the SACB articles and can't comment on pending litigation, but the safety that the children have from before and after school care, getting walked to breakfast, having on-site care, all of those can't really be ignored. So what I would urge is that you vote no at this time on this proposal. And if you come back at a later date, then please make sure we've all had a chance to talk about it and weigh in on it, knowing what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Grace.
Good evening, members of the board. I think one of the key things here is you probably want to analyze a couple of things. I think the accuracy of the reports, I think I mentioned it before, that was one of the biggest concerns. I know that counting thing is more than $10 million just to make the changes. As I said, it all depends when you generate those reports, you'll get that different information. I've been here 15 years already, and I've seen a tremendous amount of cuts. And I know if those cuts do not happen, it's only going to get worse. I guess being the numbers person and being with an accounting degree and seeing these information, it's only a matter of time. You know, I'm able to come at different times because I also have a busy schedule just like all the parents. But I come because I know the current parents that are coming should be coming more, listening, understand the budget. Like, for example, in my situation, I have 2 boys, and for circumstances, I had my other son taken to Jesuit. And I had to resolve my budget. And guess what? Since changes change there, I have to have other costs. I think that's what has to happen in some of these schools. Imagine if I considered with my same costs and not take my son to Jesuit, guess what? It's only my budget and my debt's only going to get bigger. And over time, there's going to be other cuts and affecting other impacts in my family. This is the same thing that happens here at the school. And I think we have to make them. I know it's a hard decision, but please continue to come. I'm asking the parents on television, as well the ones here right now, and the people, continue to educate yourself on this budget. And I continue to do it and know the pros and cons and what happens.
Thank you so much, Grace.
Hi, my name is Patricia Benoit, and I'm a teacher at Matsuyama Children's Center. In 1988, I was one of the original parents that helped write the grant to get fee-based child care programs at the various campuses. We were awarded $9.8 million. As a result of that, I personally opened for the Sacramento City Unified School District 3 school-age fee-based programs. Our programs not only enhance the student learning, we provide homework assistance, special activities, diverse activities, field trips, many experiences for our children. We have children that have gone on to high school that want to come back, volunteer at our center, gone on to college, become teachers, come back, teach at the schools. The results show that K through 12 starts at the child care centers. We are still a fee-based center. Our parents pay our fees. It is very important to all of our centers that are open. It sustains itself. It was very sad to hear that there was not a voice for our fee-based children's centers to speak up for us to find out why are these teachers being laid off. Please reconsider the impact. It's not just going to have within the classroom, but the families, the academics for the children, the tutoring, all the various services that are provided to all of the children at the fee-based centers. Thank you.
With that, we're going to go ahead and take questions from board members. Board Member Morowski? So first, Superintendent Aguilar is going to clarify about the Child Development Center.
President Ryan, I just want to thank everyone who came out and spoke on this item, and I appreciate one of the speakers who mentioned their willingness to continue working with our staff to find ways in which we might still continue to operate fee-based programs. And so we will continue to listen to those concerns and are ready to work with you to figure out how particularly fee-based programs can sustain themselves.
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. I appreciate that. Member Morowski, followed by Member Pritchett.
Oh, thank you, President Ryan. Can you clarify for us, please, what exactly is being considered for elimination through this resolution?
Yes, and we can put the exhibit on the visualizer. Some of the positions on there are vacant positions where there currently isn't anyone in the positions at the moment. Others do have individuals in them. That is the majority that you see of the 12.2 FTE. And one of those 12.2 FTE is related to a grant that hasn't yet been received as a portion. The rest are true reductions.
Thank you. Oh. I didn't need it, but if you...
So can you clarify whether these reductions affect our fee-based child development centers?
Those reductions were actually approved by the board at the last board meeting on the 21st in terms of positions, both certificated and classroom, related to child development. What's on here tonight related to child development is a coordinator position that is vacant, as listed on the top, as well as a coordinator position that's not vacant.
So I think, what we heard from the superintendent, and what I certainly am also suggesting, is that beyond tonight's motion, we make a commitment to work with our fee-based programs to find out what the gap is to be able to continue those services. Because I am very mindful of the fact that not only are they meeting a key need in terms of the ability to serve our children after school, children who might not actually go to our school sites if there was not on-site after-school programming, but we also have heard that there are some very strong programs, and I understand the child development reductions that were made related to another matter, but these are two very separate buckets. I have one other, did you have any other questions? Board Member Garcia?
I also wanted a clarifying question in the slide of next steps upon board approval. I don't have, okay. No, maybe another, the one prior to that, the slide, that one. Can you walk us through maybe the process that you consider? I'm particularly interested in maybe the sequence of events that take place in your analysis, and where the consideration of attrition due to vacancies, resignations, and retirements fall into place as you consider the 13 FTEs.
Sure. The analysis that is completed once a decision is made, the analysis specifically speaks to trying to determine which individuals, which staff receive which notices. And so that involves looking at each individual based on seniority, what credentials they may hold, what certifications they may hold. It is also connected to additional resolutions before you tonight with regards to skipping criteria based on credentials that individuals hold. So as we are going through that, looking at the seniority list, looking at and verifying credentials, taking into account any possible attrition that could cover that gap to get to a place where we've identified which individuals, excuse me, then get a preliminary notice, a March 15th notice.
But that happens before, intuitively, I would just think that if you've identified 13 positions, then you know which are the vacancies, so you eliminate those. I think those are 3, right? So now we're talking maybe a fifth of 10 of the 13. Consider resignations and then retirement. So I just don't know if the analysis comes first, and then you subtract the number of FTEs due to vacancies, due to resignations, and then the balance of that is based on the analysis that you...
Yes, so the first thing that has to come is we have to know what we're looking at. Thus we bring the resolution forward, right, to know exactly which areas. As we do the analysis that involves all of those parts that I just said, and that we are absolutely looking at vacancies, absolutely looking at where individuals won't have to be affected, and knowing that there might be, given an area to be reduced, a number of individuals with the same seniority date, and how we further look at those, absolutely taking into account attrition before we get to actual people that are going to potentially be affected.
Thank you. Can I ask you, Concy, and then Member Pritchett has a question. I'm curious, how many in the past layoff notices have you been able to rescind? And can you give me an example and a snapshot in time of layoff notices that were then rescinded with the ability to find other savings to help balance the budget?
Yes, and actually that was the question the board previously asked. We do have, if you want to put on the visualizer, some information that shows the amount of retirements, the amount of layoff notices in the number of years previously when we did when we went through the layoff process. And on that, you're able to see not only the number that were then rescinded in each of those years, what percentage of them retired. Teachers, individuals have the option to decline or waive it, and you can see that information provided as well. And as of, actually for a while, we have not had a rehire list, given the fact that through either being rescinded or through layoff, or through a retirement or resignation, there's no more individuals on the list.
So I'm seeing just coming out of the height of the economic recession with the layoff notices that were issued, the majority were still rescinded.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Ryan. I got to say that my fear is that these decisions that we make tonight
are not going to be the last brought to us. We have to achieve the fiscal solvency. We have to achieve healthcare savings. You're right, Concy. This is with saddened heart. This is not a decision that any of us up here want to make. As you can see by that list, we've had to do this year after year. And when I look at that list, I think about before I was on the board in 2011, I was at that meeting. And I remember all of those layoffs. In 2012, we had, in 2013, we had school closures. I'm sure that a lot of those positions were because of school closures. And thank you, President Ryan, for reminding us that these are preliminary layoffs and that we hope to have that healthcare savings. State takeover is not an option for me. It's not an option for our children. My question to you is, as I look through these preliminary layoffs, what process are we taking to make sure that there are not disparities in our lowest income neighborhoods and our lowest performing students?
Excellent question.
So each chief in the various areas has been working with their respective departments and engaging in conversations to look at all of that. There are no easy answers. There are no easy conversations or considerations. And these were put forward with that heaviness of knowing that not only do these positions mean people, real people, but there are connected services and programs to them that we do have to look at, that have been looked at, and that there is an impact.
Okay, thank you.
I know that after this item, we'll have an opportunity to talk about the cuts to the administration, so I would definitely want to delve into that in more detail, particularly given some of the mismatch in numbers and misassumptions around those cuts, which I know we'll also be making tonight. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. I have to say this is the most difficult work, and I am very clear that we are faced with very few options. And that we are looking at trying to attain healthcare savings as an alternative potentially to these layoffs, and we'll be moving forward in the weeks ahead alongside our community to prioritize how we make cuts. I'm very much hoping that we will do our due diligence to do everything in our power to rescind layoff notices. And once again, we heard tonight that there is a commitment to working with our fee-based programs and our children development centers to figure out what the gap is to ensure that continuity of services for those families.
Just to clarify, these are certificated management. I mean, you just
Yes.
indicated we will look at classified as well, but these are management positions on the top portion.
Got it. Lisa, did you like?
Just a clarification on that. Because the slide presentation referred to certificated management. So the certificated management are the first two categories here, and then K-12 teachers are just teachers. Those are certificated teachers, not management, correct?
Correct, but they're on there because of the certificated management. And part of what is completed in the process and what is required by Ed Code is that potentially these individuals who are certificated management have rights back to classroom positions. So that's how those on the bottom, that's why those are on the bottom.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the K-12 teachers, in terms of positions, these are not actual people who are in the classroom now who are going to be.
Well,
I see. The positions have to be.
There may.
Okay, I see. Because the position, it's not the person, it's the position.
Right. So, I mean, there may be individuals in these positions who receive notice based on the certificated management positions.
So if they're certificated, they may have rights back to the classroom and have higher seniority than a first year or second year teacher.
Exactly.
Correct? Oh, I see. Okay.
Thank you, Kansi. With that, we are going to entertain a motion. If anyone move item 9.2, the resolution to eliminate certificate employees. We have a motion by Board Member Pritchett and a second by Board Member Wu. All those in favor? Aye. Any abstain? Any against? The motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who came out this evening. Item 9.3, approve resolution number 3063, determination of tie-breaking criteria.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, members of the Board, Superintendent Aguilar, Concy McCarn, and Cindy Nguyen from HR. Based on the last resolution that was passed, the reduction of the particular kinds of service, we are bringing before you a resolution for the determination of tie-breaking criteria. This is in those cases where the seniority dates are exact. There's a need to look at other things. And so if we put on the visualizer, we can see the additional criteria used for that, such as types of credentials held, such as advanced degrees, and things like that. So we would request and recommend that based on the PKS resolution, that a determination of tie-breaking criteria also be adopted to use in the analysis.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on this item? Mr. Barrios?
No public comment.
Do we have any board member questions? Vice President Wu.
Thank you. Thank you, President Ryan. Just out of curiosity, Concy, why national board certification as a point?
National board certification.
What is that?
Sure. National board certification requires additional professional development and work on behalf of certificated individuals. And so it's a recognition of, as are some of the other items on there, like a doctorate or a master's, recognition of additional professional development, of additional engagement around working to increase and enhance skill set.
So can you give me an example of a national board certification?
It is actually a national board certification. That is what it's called. It's actually a program in and of itself that some teachers hold.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Student preferential vote? Nope, our student's gone. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. The motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.4, approve resolution number 3064 to determine criteria for deviation from eliminating a certificated employee in order of seniority, skipping criteria. That is a mouthful.
It is. Good evening, Board President Ryan, members of the Board, and Superintendent Aguilar, Concy McCarn, and Cindy Nguyen. Based on the resolutions just approved, as part of the analysis, we are bringing forward you for consideration the skipping criteria, which looks at both skipping and competency criteria components. So in doing the analysis and in determining which individuals based on seniority and other items, as you just approved the tie-breaking, the skipping criteria would allow us to, as it says, skip individuals who have certain credentials that are hard to fill, credentials that are high need. As you can see up there, the B-clad, some special education, math, sciences, Waldorf. And so to complete the analysis, we recommend adopting this resolution.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
It looks like we have a comment, a question from Vice President Wu. Oh, he withdrew his question. Are there any other questions from board members?
I'll move the item.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.5, approve resolution number 3059, notice of layoff classified employees, reduction in workforce due to a lack of funds or lack of work.
Good evening, Board President Ryan, members of the Board, Superintendent Aguilar, Concy McCarn, and Cindy Nguyen from HR. This resolution before you to reduce the workforce due to lack of work, lack of funds for classified staff is before you. Again, the district's commitment to, or the reason in terms of bringing the resolution forward to address and help reduce district management costs, and a commitment to include management in the shared portion of necessary cost of reductions, similarly to the resolution approved earlier regarding certificated management. This speaks to central office and others classified positions. The breakdown on this, and the exhibit is in the back, and we can certainly put that up as well, is for 2 vacant FTEs, 16 departments, 10 of which are central office, 2 of which are SEIU, for a total of 18 FTE. Similarly, upon board approval, we will analyze the impact and reductions to classified staff, of course, taking into consideration any attrition that we can, vacancies, resignations, retirements, and in order to determine who actually receives the notices. So in order to do that work and engage with our labor partners in the process of that, we need you to go ahead and consider this. Again, it's not an easy decision. We certainly get that, and want to highlight that should new information or funding become available, that the district would may then rescind notices. So with this, the staff recommends approval of this resolution.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
We can put them.
We do. If you could come up in the order you hear yourself called. Anita Warmack, Patricia Payan, Amanda Vargas, and Danae Derby.
I guess Anita went home.
Okay, and you are?
Patricia Payan.
Nice to see you.
Nice to meet you. This is my first time attending a board meeting, but it's long overdue. I have been with Sac City Unified School District for 12 years now, working in child development, so I'm classified, one of the ones that is to be laid off come March, that we receive our pink slips. And the reason I'm here, I want to just share a little bit about, as a parent, I started off as a single mother in a domestic violent relationship. When my daughter was accepted to come into the Children's Center, that was a beginning for me to get my education and to further myself and to provide a better atmosphere and home for my daughter and to give her the teachers and the aides and all those that come together to partner to help in the community. This is a community. You know, we say it takes a village, it takes a village to raise a child, and we're part of Home Base, Head Start Home Base. And I want to talk for the early Head Start and preschool, because we go into the families' homes, we partner with them, we develop relationships with them. Many of them are undocumented, where they have fears of going out, and we allow them to have the resources. We give them resources, to educate them so that they can become advocates and be confident in working with their children. Some have illnesses where they cannot be in classrooms, and we go into their homes every week, providing them the same services that are given in the classroom, but on one-on-one basis. And so I just want you to take that into consideration as a mother that can speak here tonight victoriously, that now I am a teacher giving back to the community and to the families, and I'm able to share my story with other mothers that go through these hardships and face opposition in their lives. And so considering that's what we do when we go into their homes, we build that relationship and to get them into the community and be effective like me.
And thank you for coming out and sharing your story.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Vargas, and I am a parent to 2 girls who attend the Bret Hart Children's Center. My son is now in Cal Middle School, but he also went to Bret Hart since first grade. I always wondered what that little spot was off to the side. I would see the kids come, and I signed up for it over a year ago. I was on a waiting list. It was very hard. My daughters have been through 17 different babysitters. It's very traumatizing. My littlest one has severe anxiety with staying anywhere. She cries every time. And the teachers in this program are absolutely amazing. My daughter Ruby, she will be going into kindergarten next year, and I don't know how I would explain to Sophie, no, I'm sorry, Ruby gets to go, but you don't get to go anymore because she's not going to be in kindergarten next year. And I've heard rumors that, oh, there's not many kids going to the kindergarten in this school next year. Well, there is, and I'm one of those parents, and there's many, many students in this school that have the same siblings that are going to be going. And I mean, how am I going to go to 3 different schools to take my kids? That's just not, I mean, that's not even plausible. I mean, that's really, I mean, how would, get up at 5 a.m., try to have them all at the same time? That's just not possible. And I mean, I waited all this time, and I thought, here we have something consistent. These teachers, Miss Arena, Miss Maria, Miss Gulalai, Miss Becky, Miss Cabot, these teachers are absolutely wonderful. My daughter has been in the program for 4 months. She can already write her full name. She knows all of her ABCs. I mean, the program is really amazing. That school is nice. Another thing that really bothers me, sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but the funding, the money, like, okay, we're out of money. There's a lot of things that I see that really aren't necessary. I mean, like the big monitors up here, like what is that, are those really necessary things? There's tablets in the classrooms. We're signing different notebooks, and then we have these expensive tablets that we sign. We can sign a piece of paper, it's not a big deal. There's these big expensive phones. The teachers we don't need those things. So I mean, maybe they should look and see where they're putting this money.
Those were technology grants, but I totally hear you. I mean,
Well,
we would rather have those money for
you
student
guys had
support
said,
services.
Mr. Aguilar especially, that you didn't want the students to be affected, the children. My children are being affected. And like I said, I am one voice among many, but I'm still a voice, and I still have students that are going to be affected.
And thank you so much for being a parent in our Bret Hart community. We appreciate it.
Yes, and I hope that it continues to stay. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent Aguilar. I'm Danae Derby, and I'm one of the child development specialists that does registration for preschool. And every day, I've done it for 14 years. I've been in the district longer than that, but when I see families come in every day with their children to register their children for preschool, and how happy these little kids are, knowing that they may get into preschool, and then when we call the parents and tell them that they're getting in, the happiness that they have of going to these schools and families being involved with the teachers, as you heard from one of the parents that we have in one of our programs, and the passion that children have for getting up in the mornings and knowing that they're going to get to go to preschool. The children, the connections that they have with the staff, and our department is deeply being hurt this year. And it's sad, very sad to know that some of these kids are totally being affected, and it's affecting us too. And the fact that you guys have stated that children will not be affected, I think you better think twice about what's being said. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I will tell you, and I really appreciate your compassionate and heartfelt stories about your life experiences and your choice to bring your children into our schools. There is no way around it. I mean, with the budget deficit that we're having to close, we are looking at how can we find options to not affect our children. And when we keep on coming back to this idea of finding healthcare savings, it's with the spirit of being able to ensure that we find savings that allow us to then continue to invest in people and programs. And so absolutely, I hear you. And if we had finite resources, we could do both. But right now, we're going to have choices to make, and I would much prefer the choices be to invest in people and programs and to find healthcare coverage that is good and less expensive that allows us to continue to serve our kids. And with that, I'm going to take Q&A from board members. Looks like we have one comment from Board Member Morawski.
Thank you, Kansi. Can you describe how our students will be affected by some of these positions being cut? And I should have asked you at the last one as well. I noticed a number in continuous improvement and accountability. Can you, facilities maintenance?
So, I mean, I think what I can say overall is that when there are reductions like this, that there is some shuffling that's going to have to happen, certainly, and then there are some things that's not going to be able to happen, which is why I think the notion of the board having the priority has been mentioned in terms of rescinding is important to note. But for example, if I look at, you mentioned positions in the Continuous Improvement and Accountability Office as it speaks to research and data, or as it speaks to anything else. That was just one that you mentioned. I mean, the ability of the district to produce some information that it's been able to and engage to really look at as we focus on equity, access, and social justice, to really know the extent of which all of that plays in will be impacted without a position like that. And so that there are a number of those that either mean a reduction or an elimination in terms of some of the services.
Thank you. Looks like we don't have any other board member questions. With that, I will entertain a motion. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Thank you. We appreciate the difficult work you're doing. And thank you to everyone who came out to speak tonight. Moving on to item 10.0, the consent agenda. Before we motion to approve the consent agenda, I actually have two items I would like to change. First, item 10F, approving the staff recommendations for expulsions 9, 10, and 11. We're going to actually move to open session after reconvening in closed session tonight to hear those items as we ran late earlier this morning. I would also like to remove item 10.1G, approving the resolution for board member stipend for 3062, a board member stipend that I would be receiving for a approved absence. Many think that the board members have full-time jobs with the school board and receive salaries. We do receive $787 a month for the work we do. And I can tell you, I continue to put more hours than I can count into the work because I am committed to making sure that we find a path to fiscal solvency. And that being said, I am waiving my ability to receive reimbursement for item 10.1G. Do we have a second? Student preferential vote?
I vote yes on all open session items.
All those in favor?
May I, sorry.
Oh.
I had a question on one. Can I pull one from consent to ask a question, or?
Sure. Sure. What item are you asking to pull from consent?
The 10.1A, I had just a question about the AMS.net contract. I don't really understand what all of these services are, and I just wanted to have a quick explanation.
Do we have someone here this evening that can speak
I could speak to that.
Okay.
AMS.net is a contractor who is currently deploying fiber optic cabling and network infrastructure equipment to school sites across our district. Majority of the costs for their contract are actually eligible for federal reimbursement under the E-rate program.
Thank you. Board Member Garcia, did you still have a question?
I too had a question on that item. Is this some work that can be done in-house, or do we have to contract out? It's just a very large contract, so
This is specialized work that typically takes place digging trenches in roads to lay fiber optic cable to connect our schools to one another. So this is not work that we have the ability to perform in-house.
And what's the purpose of the work? how is it helping students?
We're in the process of actually building a fiber optic network, essentially, for connectivity, internet connectivity and connectivity between and across schools. So that's a project that's been underway for several years. This is essentially the final phase of that project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elliot, for your explanation. I appreciate that, and for your questions. So with that, and the amendments to the previous consent agenda item, I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second, student preferential vote.
Yes on all open session items.
Great. And with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 11.0, communications. Item 11.1, employee organizational reports. SCTA, SCIU, TCS, Teamsters, UPE. Item 11.2, District Parent Advisory Committee, Community Advisory Committee, District English Language Learner Advisory Committee. Oh, sorry, we do have a representative from the Community Advisory Committee. Thank you, Renee, for staying this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, President Ryan, members of the board. So on behalf of the Community Advisory Committee, I have a prepared statement that the executive officers have asked me to share with you. We have prepared a letter to Dr. Taylor and Director Bryant. We've been, as a new board, a reconstituted board, we've been operating for several months now, and we presented a letter in an effort to continue the spirit of growth and reestablishment of an effective CAC. And in particular, we're asking for more clarity around shared logistics and district assistance in support of the CAC. This really goes to equity and parity. We see many of the other task forces and parent engagement groups getting food and full staff support. And whereas the CAC has been feeling like a lot of the work has been transferred to the members of the CAC, and so we really just want to level set that and to make sure that staff is providing parity and support as it would with other parent engagement groups, including the Graduation Task Force and African American Initiative. Similarly, we would like a CAC designee to be appointed to key district committees. LCAP, as many of you may know, I sort of informally serve as a liaison between the LCAP PAC and the CAC, but we believe that due to the importance of the needs of students with disabilities, both as a moral imperative and under the education code, that there should be a formal designee to ensure that the needs of students with disabilities are being fairly represented in the LCAP
Renee,
plans.
I am very happy to add that to our next LCAP appointment process. I think that is very fair request and greatly necessary given the decisions that you make within that committee.
Thank you very much, President Ryan. Similarly, we'd like similar thought and consideration around some of the other efforts, including the multi-tiered system of supports and the African American Initiative, the Graduation Task Force. So just to be sure that the needs of students with disabilities are expressly included in those initiatives. We would like a list and summary of all the trainings and professional developments that teachers and other staff have been receiving pursuant to the audits, including the mandated audits. And this goes to transparency. The CAC would really like to know the messaging and the training that the teachers are getting so that we're all of the same mind of equal access to the information that's being shared and the assumptions that teaching staff is operating from. And then lastly, we presented a modest budget for the staff's consideration. We believe that the SELPA funds include support of the CAC and just wanting to make sure that some of our ability to proactively educate and support parents in the district has some modest budgets to include things like food or meeting facilities and the like.
Thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Mhm.
We gave Renee a little bit more time because we actually didn't have somebody running the clock.
Thank you
But we
very
enjoyed
much.
hearing from you. Thank you.
I just want to make.
Go ahead. Vice
Renee?
President Wu.
Renee, whether it's on CSBA's agenda or not, next Tuesday is CSBA's Ledge Day, and I will be there pitching with members of the legislature, hopefully getting as a category for LCFF, special education.
Thank you very
That
much,
has not been on
Member
the
Wu.
agenda before. And I want to bring it to their attention, and then the following week I'll be in DC pitching for, in the halls of Congress for more money for IDEA.
Thank you very much. If there's any support we can provide, let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Please. Our District English Learner Advisory Committee, and my apologies.
Buenas noches a todos. Mi nombre es María Flores. Y conmigo se encuentra la señora secretaria Vitolina Tufi.
Hi, I'm Vitolina Tufi. I'm secretary of the LULAC committee and also representative of LULAC of my child's school.
Hi, my name is Rosa Rivera, and I will be interpreting after Ms. Maria is done with her.
Buenas noches, presidente Ryan, superintendente Aguilera y miembros de la Junta y miembros de la Junta. Mi nombre es María del Carmen Flores, soy la presidenta del comité de DILAC. Conmigo se encuentra la señora Vitolina, que es la secretaria, y tengo una vicepresidenta que es la señora Teresa Hernández y no pudo asistir ahora. Juntas hemos luchado para que nuestros estudiantes aprendices del inglés y sus familias reciban la ayuda necesaria y logren los estándares requeridos para su reclasificación. Mas, sin embargo, no es suficiente todo lo que hemos hecho. Tengo una hija que cursa el séptimo grado en la escuela Didions. Este es su séptimo año en el programa de aprendices de inglés y me preocupa que aún no ha sido reclasificada. Según las reglas o estatus del programa, los estudiantes deberían estar 6 años en el programa y recibir la asistencia necesaria para ser reclasificados. Según la cifra que hemos recibido del Departamento Multilingüe, existen 8,936 estudiantes en el programa de aprendices del inglés y solamente serán reclasificados 925 de ellos. Como ven, necesitamos apoyo. Y aunque se ha implementado nuevos estándares como el nuevo examen del LPAC, estos cambios no han sido diseñados más que para largo plazo. Y yo les pregunto a ustedes, ¿qué pasa con los estudiantes que no tienen más tiempo como mi hija o como los que están en preparatoria y a punto de ser graduados? ¿Cómo el Distrito Escolar de Sacramento ayudará a los estudiantes que ya tienen 6 o más años en este programa y aún no han sido reclasificados? Ya no podemos esperar más a que los cambios den resultados. Es una lástima que solo cientos de ellos sean reclasificados. Como madre, desearía que mi hija Cintia Tijerina estuviera en esa lista de reclasificación, pero no es así. Y como mi hija, existen 8,011 estudiantes esperando salir del programa. Mi hija ya tiene más de 6 años en este programa y cada vez será más difícil para ella lograr una reclasificación. Yo, como presidenta de DILAC y madre de un estudiante de aprendiz de inglés, no pido, sino exijo que mi hija sea reclasificada. Exijo que el Distrito Escolar de Sacramento, el Departamento Multilingüe, los directores, los maestros, cumplan con su trabajo y no solo exijan un aumento de sueldo o que la mesa directiva solo se enfoque en ajustar un presupuesto. Así es que, señora May, como representante de la zona 5, que es donde yo vivo, señor Wu, representante de la zona 6, es en la zona en la que mi hija asiste actualmente a su escuela, y otros miembros de la mesa. Les pido que por favor hagan su trabajo. que demuestren que son dignos representantes de ocupar el puesto que les fue confiado por los electores. Yo les pido que usen su lema que tienen en el distrito, que ningún niño se quede atrás. Pero también les pido que agreguen otra palabra, hoy. Entonces se podrá decir que ningún niño se quede atrás hoy. Ya no tenemos más tiempo. Mi hija ya no puede esperar más. Este es mi cuarto o tercer año que vengo ante ustedes a hablar de mi hija y de mis otros 2 hijos que nunca fueron reclasificados. Por favor, ayúdenos. Termino con algo que aprendí en la conferencia regional de CABE por la oradora principal, Reina Grande. Ella dijo, no es necesario olvidar la lengua materna para aprender un segundo idioma. Así es que les pido a todos los padres de estudiantes de aprendices de inglés que nunca dejen de enseñar a sus hijos su lengua materna. Nunca dejen que sus hijos se sientan avergonzados por hablar un segundo idioma. Al contrario, díganles que son ejemplo a seguir por hablar 2 idiomas. Gracias y que tengan una buena noche.
Thank you. And I'm afraid we went double over time, but if we can please.
So good evening, President Ryan, Superintendent Aguilar, and board members. My name is Maria del Carmen Flores. I am president of LULAC committee. I'm here representing my committee. Together we have fought for our English learners and their families to receive necessary help and achieve the standards required for reclassification. However, it has not been enough, for we've done everything we've done, and I have a daughter who is in 7th grade at Genevieve Didden School. She's in her 6th year in the English learning program, and I am worried that she has not yet been reclassified. According to the rules and the bylaws of the program, the students who have been in the program for 6 years have been receiving the necessary assistance to be reclassified, but they have not been met. Those standards according to what has been given to us on 11/28/2018 by the Multicultural Literacy Department. There are 8,936 students in the English learning program, and there will only be 925 reclassified students. As you can see, we need more support. And although new standards have been implemented, such as the new LCAP exam, these changes have been designed in the long term, and I'm asking them what happens with those students who do not have more time, like my daughter, and like those in high school who are about to graduate, who will in Sacramento Unified District help the students and who are already here for more than 6 years into the program. We've been waiting long for the changes and to produce results. It is pity that only a few hundred are being reclassified. As a mother, I would like to see my daughter be reclassified and be on that list, but this is no longer the case. And like my daughter, as the others existing, the 8,011 students waiting to be reclassified, just like your slogan says, that no child should be left behind.
Thank you. Can we have Superintendent Aguilar respond to this? Because this has been a huge priority for him, and I know Board Member Vang and I have talked about this in detail. Superintendent Aguilar has worked very much in his first 18 months of tenure to ensure that we are better identifying and reclassifying our students.
Señora, buenas noches. Gracias por venir, sí me acuerdo de usted. Mire, a mí me llena de consternación saber del caso de su hija. Primeramente porque soy padre de 4 hijos todos ellos fueron aprendices de inglés. Y en el caso de todos, fueron reclasificados por las demandas que hice yo, que hizo mi esposa, ante sus maestros, maestras, directores, etc. Así que la petición que usted nos hace hoy, esta noche, yo me voy a encargar de que veamos el caso de su hija, porque tiene mucha razón y le agradezco y la felicito por el empoderamiento que tiene de saber sobre los estudios, lo que nos dicen los investigadores en cuanto al tiempo que se debe de tomar para que un joven sea reclasificado. Así que nosotros le hemos fallado porque si su hija ya está en el 6º año y empezó como aprendiz de inglés, ya vamos atrasados. Así que le agradezco mucho el hecho de que esté abogando por su hija y le prometo que vamos a dar seguimiento al caso de su hija, pero más allá, ojalá que siga con ese cabildeo por los demás estudiantes, los 8,000 estudiantes que servimos, que son aprendices de inglés, porque de hecho recibimos muchos fondos en este distrito que deben de ser específicamente dedicados a las necesidades de estudiantes que son aprendices de inglés. Y por medio de su involucramiento en el DLAC, por medio de todos los ELACs, a mí me encantaría ver a más padres de familia haciendo la misma demanda que nos hizo hoy esta noche. Que muchas gracias.
Solo quería agregar una cosa, señor superintendente. Estoy viendo que pues todos, como esta noche, todos han venido a abogar por sus puestos y en las notas que dieron hoy hay recortes en el departamento de aprendices de inglés y como les digo, estamos muy atrasados. Yo no abogo nada más por mí, por todos los estudiantes del distrito y como dice usted, es una lástima que el distrito reciba tanto dinero para esos estudiantes y no es que no haya dinero, es que no se han aprovechado adecuadamente para los estudiantes.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you coming this evening. Local control, I'm sorry. Member Garcia, I didn't see that you had lit that up.
Yes. Muchas gracias por venir y abogar no solamente por tu hija, pero también por todos los miles de aprendizajes de inglés. I'm an English learner. I was reclassified, and because of that reclassification, I had access to other courses that put me on a path to college and successfully complete a master's degree. So it's just not about reclassification. It's about all of the other opportunities that come after being a reclassified, being proficient, deemed proficient in English. I'm looking forward to working with Superintendent Aguilar on ensuring that we follow up on your request, but not just on behalf of your daughter, also on behalf of the thousands of other English learners, because we are getting millions of dollars more in additional resources for English learners.
Gracias, señora.
Gracias.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. And our last committee tonight, the Local Control Accountability Plan Advisory Committee. Cecile, thank you for staying with us late. Of course you do.
Well, I'll keep it short. I don't think I'll go over my 3 minutes. And there were a few things that I just wanted to report to the board. Number one, we did change our priorities. I think that we just added to, and I just want to list them for the public. Number one, and these are not necessarily in priority order, they're just what the priorities of the committee. Close the achievement gap, increase diversity of the GATE and specialty programs, increase performance of students with disabilities, reduce chronic absenteeism, increase counselors and social workers specializing in trauma and add training for teachers and school psychologists. They support for anti-bullying efforts, increase civic engagement, and 8, performance of foster youth. reduce the suspension rate, and increase the number of bilingual counselors and social workers. Now, since our last meeting, I believe, most of the LCAP members should have reached out to all of the board members, is what should have happened, and talked about those priorities, and I'm sure that you've shared your views with them. The other thing that I know that the LCAP committee has been very interested in is, number one, making recommendations, but also hearing from the board on various feedback, not just one-on-one, but feedback in general. And then I am happy to report that when I looked at the attendance, I believe the attendance has been much better this year for the LCAP committee members.
It
So
has,
it's
and I
been,
want to thank you all. I know you've been coming regularly to the meetings at sacrifice to your personal life, and you've been weekly at the African American
Yes.
Task Force as well, so thank you.
all right.
Item 11.3, Superintendent's Report.
Thank you, President Ryan, and board members for being here tonight. I want to start by acknowledging the anxiety and very serious apprehension that I know many of our employees are feeling tonight based on the decisions that were made by our board following my recommendations, which were discussed in open session. There's absolutely not any sense of pleasure in being the responsible person for sending out layoff notices over the next few days. And that's not only because I don't want to do that, but because I'm familiar with the pain and suffering that comes when a family loses employment, particularly in communities like Sacramento, where we have such concentration of poverty. I can think about my own parents who, as migrant farm workers, knew that they would not have work throughout the entire year and had to plan for that. And in this case, I know that our recommendations didn't necessarily allow for that. So I want to just say how much I empathize with the families that will be impacted. I do want to just say that layoffs are never a choice that is a preferred choice. And I am committed, and you've heard board members mention that we are all committed to rescind these layoff notices as soon as we find the resources through negotiations. Because state takeover is not acceptable as an alternative because of the impact that you've all heard individuals provide commentary about throughout the day. The impacts are long-lasting, decades long-lasting, and the idea of taking a state loan and paying interest on those essentially means that we have even less money to provide to our students. And I don't see that as a responsible plan for us to adopt. So this is where we stand, unfortunately, and I'm not giving up on a better and more responsible way, and I will continue to invite all of our labor partners to begin the negotiations process that is necessary for us to negotiate the savings that I think are very viable and will put us back on the right path. I do want to share, in the spirit of transparency, that the screenshot that you see above me is the screenshot of a budget dashboard that went live today on our website that essentially shows and gives our public access to the same financial information that we use in the district office to make budget decisions. I want to thank Chair Morawski of our Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Committee for leading the work that led to the development of this budget dashboard. And I want to thank our staff who, contrary to public opinion, took it upon themselves to put in countless hours with other departments in our district to develop this dashboard. This is not the result of a third-party contract or any resources that were expended to get us to this point. We will make sure that everybody is aware of the website, the webpage to access this. This is where any member of our public will be able to access deeper level data that you can use and disaggregate and filter as you deem appropriate so that you can come and ask us questions about the budget process. I also want to just let you know that this afternoon I was able to listen into the community-led effort around Safe Sac Schools, which was led by our Labor Management Consortium, community-based organizations, and others. And I want to thank all of those individuals for calling upon us to take a responsible approach to remedy our budget challenges. And I want to thank the board as well for adopting a resolution that very clearly set the expectation for me as your superintendent to make sure that we put a cap on our administrative spending until our budget improves, that we make sure that we have an accountability plan to ensure that our vacation liability doesn't grow as it did prior to my arrival, and making sure that we change those policies. And I know that our board is also committed to studying and looking to adopt other board policies around our reserves and other matters as well, so that we're not in this situation again. So I hope that these small actions demonstrate our commitment to taking a responsible approach to addressing our fiscal challenges. And again, I want to thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. Item 11.4, President's Report. I wanted to take the few minutes that I have tonight to talk about the trauma that our community is experiencing post the Stefan Clark decision. I think that it's very telling when my own 6- and 8-year-olds are talking about the sadness that they feel over the death of Stefan Clark, the magnitude of the weight that so many of our community members feel, and what is the re-traumatization of a community that already feels marginalized. We've seen that manifest in many peaceful protests. We know that that has also resulted in youth coming out across the city in healing spaces and safe zones that have been created to express their frustrations and fears. And this idea that they worry as Black children in the world that they will not be safe or valued in the same way that their white peers would be. I think I shared once that my mother told me before she passed away from cancer that her greatest fear was how her Black grandson would be viewed in a world that was not kind to Black boys. And so this idea that we continue to grapple with a society in which our young Black males die at an alarming rate is something that sits with me every day. I also want to recognize the moments of beauty in the last couple of days as our students have exercised the power of their voice in peaceful protest. I think we saw illustrated through several student walkouts this afternoon and the work happening with Sacramento City College under the leadership of Michael Gutierrez through a series of community-related healing events and marches, that our youth are asking to be heard, they are asking to be valued, they are asking for a community that is inclusive, and most importantly, they want to ensure that they have the same lifetime opportunity that more affluent communities have, that communities who have grown up under the privilege and whiteness of their skin have. And we should be doing everything we can in our power to embrace those efforts, to support those youth, and to ensure that we're upending a system that has been unkind to students who are traditionally left behind. Item 11.5, Student Board Member Report, Rachel Halbo.
This has been a long night, so I will keep it short. Source Media, the official media agency of SCUSD, which is student-led, runs the Be Here campaign, which is designed to increase attendance rates. This school year, Source Media has held 4 successful school rallies. The schools that are a part of the program so far are Rosemont High School, Hiram Johnson High School, Harkness Elementary School, and Oak Ridge Elementary School. The next Be Here rally will be at Elder Creek Elementary School on March 29th. Student Advisory Council is working on our LCAP recommendations and leading focus groups on high school campuses to discuss district-level issues the students find important. Election information for both Student Advisory Council and the student board member position will be available soon. I recently met with representatives from schools to talk about Student Advisory Council and its function as a representative body, and I'm looking forward to seeing a more inclusive and representative Student Advisory Council this coming year.
Thank you so much, Student Board Member Halbo. Item 11.6, information sharing by board members. Do we have any board members with updates or information that they want to share this evening? Board Member Morawski.
Hi, this is my first time, thank you, President Ryan, sharing anything on this item, so let me know if I'm out of line. But I felt it was important, not just on a particular agenda item, but just to say, given our budget situation, it's critical for us to have full parent and community and stakeholder engagement as we make final decisions on our budget going forward for 2019-20 and the following year. I feel like we've been moving so quickly given we have statutory deadlines if we want to even preserve certain budget options to take. And I don't want really to take any of these options, but this is kind of what's on the table for us at this point. It's not my preference. I mean, I value the carpet cleaners and accountability and all of the things that we talked about tonight. And I just want to reiterate that the options we have on the table that we can take without our stakeholders, our partners are not scalpel type options. They're kind of like cleaver type options. They're deep and hurtful and because we don't have a whole lot of flexibility to work with. So I just wanted to reiterate that we're stronger together, and I hope we can, all work together to come out of this problem and rescind some or all of those layoff notices that we had to approve.
Thank you, Board Member Morawski. Well said. Do we have any other? No. Board Member Wu.
Thank you, President Ryan. I just want to take a point of privilege and recognize former school board member Karen Young, who's in the audience, has been sitting all night.
Yes. Hi,
I can't believe you're still here.
Thank you. Thank you. We have no other board member comments at this time. We're going to item number 11.7, Board Committee Reports. Do we have any Board Committee reports from the Board Evaluation Committee? No? Board Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Committee.
Yes, thank you, President Ryan. We did meet on the 28th of February, and we are working on our format for our district fiscal update, and we'll have regular reporting on how we're doing on the FCMAT, implementing the FCMAT audit recommendations as a standing item. We will, I think we will have cash flow reporting to our full board as a result of some of the conversations we've had. I want to commend the superintendent and staff. Elliot and his team has worked very hard on the budget transparency tool, which we also discussed, and I hope all of you will have so much fun with that. I'm excited to see that launched. And I wanted to unfortunately let you know that we are not going to be meeting next week. That would be our regular standing Thursday meeting, just given the workload in the budget office and for the people who are dealing with our budget situation. So just trying to give them a little breathing room around the second interim. So we will reschedule that, and I'll have an update for you at the next board meeting. And I also wanted to, on governance committee is actually the same, will not be meeting next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Morowski. Any other committee updates? Facilities Committee, Board Member Pritchett.
The facilities meeting will take place March 18th at 11:45 at the Facilities Permit Office.
Policy Committee.
The Policy Committee will actually be meeting tomorrow, March 8th, 11:30 to 1:30 in the Indiana room. There are several items that we'll be reviewing. One is reviewing our questioning and apprehension policy that deals with student law enforcement interaction with students. We've been working really hard to really use a lot of the ACLU language as a sample language. We also plan to have several community meetings to discuss about this policy. The Policy Committee will also be discussing the removal of willful defiance as a allowable offense for suspension. So we are moving forward on that. And then lastly, we have several policies that need updating, and we'll be working really hard on just updating the community on what we're going to do in terms of updating our policy process. So we are encouraging folks to join us tomorrow at 11:30 to 1:30 here at CERNA.
Thank you, Maya. I'm very excited about that work. Item 12.0, Business and Financial Information Reports. Receive information. 12.1, Enrollments and Attendance Report for month 5. Do we have any public comment on that
We do.
item?
We have a public comment from Cecile Nunley.
You just love us so much, you had to come back.
Of course, this is one of those areas that I think is just so crucial, so I keep bringing it and bringing it. When I look at the attendance report, and especially when I'm looking at the elementary, I'm noticing that there are 12 schools that now are either right at 6% or below. And in particular, those that are below, Bret Harte is not even at 94%, Father B. Kinney, John D. Sloan, and Leotata Floyd, as well as Woodbine Elementary, are all in the 93 percentile. For your middle school, you have Kit Carson is at 92.74. And then, of course, when you get to your high school, you have Hiram Johnson is at 92.49. And then you have Luther Burbank is at 92.91. So they're even below 93%. I believe last year, if I'm not mistaken, either both of those schools or one of them was hitting very close to 90% or below. If 10% is chronic absenteeism, then you're talking about the entire school site is that it has chronic absenteeism. That becomes a very, very serious issue. Again, we don't have to wait until the dashboard. We don't have to wait till next fall to know this is a problem. We have to start dealing with this now. And especially with those 2 high schools that have some of the highest concentration of African American students. And we are looking at the African American Task Force, as you said. They will be bringing their recommendations back at the next board meeting. One of the things that has been very concerning has been the budget crisis.
Yes.
And people are very, very nervous and very concerned, but we feel very strongly as well that those recommendations, many of those, have to be implemented, because if we're going to move the needle at all, we have to start doing things now.
Thank you so much, Cecile. I appreciate those comments. Board Member Garcia.
Yeah, so related to some of these school sites that are, are hovering right around 90%, 92, how do we at the district level identify these issues and how do we target and deploy support and services to help the schools? Because this is a monthly attendance report, right? So I'm just wondering how nimble we are in terms of deploying services.
Sure. In terms of overall district support, we do have several tools that definitely work in conjunction with the monthly report you see. So the board heard in the fall about our launch of our early identification intervention system, and so our student support services unit actually has been doing trainings with principals, with social workers to really look by student by need. And as you think about an early warning system, we already have business processes that directly address students who are in the red and yellow zones, and so we're monitoring that. Actually, as a central office, we've actually got a sub-team which includes, again, folks from Student Support Services, our IASs, and we were meeting monthly to just review results, but speaking directly to Ms. Nunley's point, is actually taking action with site visits to work with site teams in terms of asking questions around how we can support them in terms of their work, and then also looking at the bright spots, because they actually, through the work, as the board spoke earlier about the Be Here grant, we actually are identifying some of our chronic absenteeism sites where they've been reducing the number, and so we're trying to look and study cases where we're seeing reductions in chronic absenteeism rate to build capacity as well as study across the district. So there's multiple actions in place. I'd probably say the most important really is our EIS system, because that's the system that makes those students visible and allows us to take action.
Thank you. Okay.
President Ryan, can I just also just add that I think what is very unique about our efforts around chronic absenteeism is that we have the ability to deploy more nimbly, as you said, Member Garcia, but also that in our performance and targeted action index, which is our own framework of continuous improvement and accountability, the idea for us is not just to reduce chronic absenteeism, but that when we've shown that our interventions have successfully gotten students to come to school, that we will track how those students are performing academically once we have intervened successfully. And so in that regard, we think that we will continue to try to be a model for creating greater synergy between chronic absenteeism and academic performance. So we know that students who are chronically absent don't perform as well, but we don't think that we should only try to reduce chronic absenteeism and not pay attention to the academic performance of those students once they do come back to school.
Thank you, Superintendent Aguilar. With that, item 13.0, future board meeting dates and location. Our next board meeting will be on March 21st with 4:30 p.m. closed session, followed by open session at 6. We're actually going to re-adjourn back into closed session. Thank you to everybody who stayed this whole evening.
And open session will be upstairs as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, I need to come back.